Wayne Medinsky.
Lynn Delahaye.
And again, I'm Dan Nikniowski.
Good evening, Rich Richardson.
Guy Bradley.
Good evening, Steve Scott, Board Attorney.
And also with us in the audience is our alternate member, Mr. Ronald Payne. Supporting staff is here tonight or via Zoom in the meeting room. Harry Knight, Deputy Director from Lugham. Stacy Clements, Planner 3 with Land Use and Growth Management. Supporting staff in attendance via Zoom are Dave Weiskopf, but Dave is here also. Neil Murphy, and I think Neil is here also. John Hauser, Assistant County Attorney. And Donnie Mills, Deputy Director of Department of Public Works and Transportation. In the media control room is Alex Huseman, who is the media producer tonight. In the Savage conference room, Sherry Young is the Board of Appeals recording secretary. And then the applicants and the representatives and the speakers to be in attendance via room, and we'll go over those when each of the cases comes up. We have two public hearing cases tonight on the agenda this evening. Case 1 is CUAP 19-131-021 Sloan Gravel Mine. And then the second case is VAAP 210038 Toyota of Southern Maryland. Before we start the hearing for these cases, and for our viewers at home, you will be able to see the staff and applicants' presentation on Channel 95 or YouTube as these presentations are being shown. You can also see all of the documents that have been submitted for the case by going to Board Docs. Ms. Clements will now demonstrate how to locate and use Board Docs.
Okay. Good evening. The website is stmarysmd.com. That's stmarysmd.com. You will view the ribbon on the right-hand side. We have a tab for Board Docs. It'll take a moment for it to load up. It's a large program. And once it's loaded, we will look for tonight's meeting, which is the fourth meeting, down highlighted, Thursday, November 18th, 2021, Board of Appeals meeting. You click on that. You go to the middle, and we want to say View the Agenda. And on the left-hand side will be our agenda for this evening. And in order to see all of the attachments that will be presented tonight, you would click on the public hearings under number 4, and it will show the attachments in the center pane, and all the attachments will be here. Okay.
Thank you, Stacy.
You're welcome.
As I mentioned earlier, the first case tonight will be CUAP 19-131-021 Sloan Gravel Mine. And just as a brief recap, the initial public meeting for this case was on July 8th, 2021. However, that was canceled due to a tropical storm and poor driving conditions on that date. The case was rescheduled to August 19th, 2021, and that meeting was also rescheduled until a continuance until September 16th, 2021. At that meeting on September 16th, 2021, the meeting was canceled or postponed till October 14th, 2021, per the St. Mary's County Attorney's Office request. And then that meeting on the 14th of October was continued until tonight's meeting because of technical difficulties, and we're going to rehear public hearing or listen to any additional comments that people may have this evening. As a brief recap as to where we are and what the project entails, I'm going to ask Chris Longmore, the attorney for the applicant, to come in and give us a brief presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. For the record, I'm Chris Longmore. I'm the attorney here tonight representing the applicant with this conditional use approval. As the board will recall, and for the benefit of those watching tonight, we did begin the hearing on the last hearing date in October. And at that time, we had several members of our team that presented to the board about the project. I believe all those members are here tonight, just so the board is aware in case there's questions that arise from the public comment that'll be given today. In the room with us tonight is Barry Vuckmer, who prepared the site plan and testified at the beginning of the last hearing. We also have virtually on the Zoom call, Mr. Curtis Grice from Sloan Materials. We have two folks from Traffic Concepts, both of whom testified last time, Mark Keeley and John Mayer. Jay Hobson, an engineer with Hobson Consulting, is also available through Zoom tonight if there's any questions. He's handled some of the sediment erosion issues with the project and is one of the engineers on the project. And Mr. Eddie Sloan, I understand, is either here or on his way tonight. Randall Sloan was also here last time. He was unavailable to be here tonight in person, but Eddie Sloan, one of the owners of the property, is here or will be here. And again, we're here asking for a conditional use approval. We think the record is very clear. There were some technical difficulties last time. The meeting was recorded and available on YouTube and through other means, and that video has been up on YouTube since the last hearing night. We checked it, I believe, the next day. Just to remind the board and kind of highlight briefly for the board, the testimony began in our case with Mr. Vuckmer, who shared that the project had gone through the TEC review in October 2019. The mining permit for the surface mine that's being requested was approved pending Board of Appeals approval. And he shared the concept site plan, which is in the record, and we have available should the board or the public need to see any aspects of that tonight. Mr. Curtis Grice then testified with Sloan Materials and shared from his perspective the importance of being able to mine these types of materials within our community because of the needs within our community for them. He also, as the board will recall, talked about how determining where to put a gravel mine is really dependent on where the gravel is, and commented on one of the primary goals of the Rural Preservation District where this property is located includes the promotion of extractive industry, including mining. He also talked about concerns that were raised in some of the public testimony about dust and shared with us the controls that Sloan Materials will have on site, including a water tanker truck to help minimize any dust that is generated from the property. One of the other comments that I found kind of poignant was sharing that the trucks that are used in this and used by Sloan Materials contribute approximately $200,000 a year in taxes on those trucks on the roads. So there's certainly, my client is very aware of the concerns that citizens are raising about traffic. That's why we have Mr. Keeley and Mr. Mayer here to answer any of those questions. But that, I think, demonstrates how much this particular applicant contributes those fees which are in support of public roads and other public materials. We did have Mark Keeley testify for Traffic Concepts. I know the slides are in the record that showed he discussed the traffic and sight lines were some of the primary testimony he had. He also shared with the board and the public the route that the trucks would take, leaving the mine, turning left onto Morganza Turner Road, right onto Route 235, then onto Route 247 to the wash plant that's located on Route 5, and then it will return back to the site, back through 247 and Busy Corner Road to Morganza Turner again. And Mr. Mayer also testified as the one that helped to prepare the written letter that's in the record. All of our The presentation materials are on board docs. The PowerPoint is on there as well if any of the public is watching tonight and wants to access them. And I believe I asked last time, but we'd ask that all the materials that the applicant has submitted be made part of the record. And we look forward to hearing more public comment tonight and look forward to providing a summary at the end of that comment tonight. So we're available for questions if the board has any. But again, we're looking forward to hearing the public comment and then giving our response after that.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
I think what we will do now is we'll open the meeting up to public comment and public testimony again. After the completion of that, we will let Mr. Longmore again do a rebut or a summary of the case. And then the board will go through and ask questions of Mr. Longmore, and he can direct it to whoever he feels is necessary. And after we've had all our questions answered, we'll close it and go into deliberations and hopefully come to a decision. So that's the plan for tonight. And with that, I will open the meeting up to public testimony. I would like to remind you that if you can, please keep your comments to 3 minutes, or then come back after everybody else has had a chance to speak. So with that, if anybody in the audience would like to speak first, or do we have a list, Harry? No list?
I can retrieve the list from outside.
If anybody wants to speak? Okay. Again, for the record, would you state your name?
Right here.
Either way.
My name is Samantha Lane.
Okay.
I live at, do you want my address?
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt. Please remember to swear everybody in. Thank you.
And your address?
It's 39880 Mrs. Graves Road,
Okay.
Mechanicsville, Maryland.
And if you raise your right hand, please raise your right hand and repeat after, or not repeat, but answer it. Do you declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony, responses, and statements you are about to give will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay. Please proceed.
So I took the time to go ahead and review the comprehensive zoning ordinance, chapter 25, which talks about the conditional use of the applicant and what they're asking for. I noticed that, certain standards should be met for the board to approve this. And I see that there are 8 standards. And in the standards, it talks about, I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous. Anyway, it talks about public safety and public health. And that if there is an issue with that, then you should not approve this. We've already identified that there are issues with public health and public safety in regards to the dump trucks on the road. There's no, shoulder. We do have a lot of Amish on this road. We have farmers on this road. We have a public path with lots of foot traffic. There's potential risk for safety to all of those individuals. I personally walk on this road to get to the path. I would be concerned for my own safety being able to do that because we don't have adequate road for this to occur. Also, it talks about the enjoyment of my property. I feel that I will not be able to enjoy my property if this goes through. Where I live, I can physically see this from my porch. I know that this will be a noise nuisance to me and my neighbors. The dust, I know that we talked about mitigation measures, but that's not much. He's already said that they're going to tear down the trees. So there really aren't any mitigation measures that he's putting in place besides the water truck to prevent dust from flowing into our property and the potential for airborne contaminants that could affect our health. It will also incur financial burden to me because I will also have to power wash my house more often, potentially have health risks. And I know that you guys talked about the fact that the health department approved this, but have you taken into consideration the people who live in the neighborhood? There are risks depending on the age of the individual and their immune system and the kids that live right across the street. This is going to go on for 12 years. You don't think that potentially that's going to have a health risk to those kids? And I know that there are other people that live right across the street that have cancer. Their immune system isn't going to be able to handle that. There's some definite concern there. Also, my property value. It says if there's going to be an impairment to my property value, which I know there is, I've already called the real estate agent. They're telling me to sell my property now because I'm not going to make the same amount of money I would make if this goes through. So therefore, I don't think that the board should approve this based off the standards. So if you could please review these standards and make sure that you're making the right decision that's going to promote this rural preserve area and help our environment and our neighborhoods continue to be what they are right now. Thank you.
Okay, hold on a second, ma'am. Do the board members have any questions?
No.
No, sir.
Yeah, I do. At any time, did you reach out to Sloan, or did they reach out to you?
They did not, and I did not reach out to them because honestly, I didn't even know about this until my neighbors brought this to our attention. And then I realized that this was happening and participated in the last hearing. I don't know Mr. Sloan, I've never met him, so I have not reached out to him. But, you know,
Okay,
that's all I got.
thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, ma'am.
Who signed up, if you want to follow the rest. If you wanted to call the next person.
Okay, the next person we have on our list here is David Ack. Do you wish to speak? There you go. And again, if you'd stand as you are, raise your right hand, and then do you declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony, responses, and statement you may give will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Very good, proceed.
Hi, my name is David Ack. I live at 25907 in Harmony Lane, Mechanicsville, Maryland, 20659. I am also the Vice President of the Grandview Haven Homeowners Association. We have 123 homes in our neighborhood. Most of us, including mine, live on the back of the creek that runs through this property. We are unanimously against this project. Had we known that this was going to go through when we started building our homes 5, 6, 7 years ago, I would have never bought down there. Everybody that has lived in this county or knows Morganza Turner Road knows that there's a safety issue with these trucks. The intersection of 235 and Morganza Turner Road was reconstructed due to a dump truck accident that was a fatal accident several years ago. There's no way to improve Morganza Turner Road to handle these trucks. And I know that they have a transportation plan, but the reality, we know time is money. These trucks aren't going to make a left and go out Morganza Turner Road to go up 235, to go down 247, when they can just go down Morganza Turner Road, make a left on Route 5, and get to where they get. So it's safety not only for us, for our community, but the environmental impact. Our water tower feeds off of several springs that are fed from the creek. How do we know that this runoff isn't going to affect our drinking water? That's a huge issue for us, for our children. We have lots of children in our neighborhood. That drinking water is important to us as it is important to everybody. And the dust will come from that area when they remove the trees. A simple water truck, we know, isn't going to be enough to calm the dust from a mining, especially, we had a good summer, we had a good wet summer, but most of our summers are hot and dry. And that's dust and dirt that will come into our neighborhood. And as the other lady spoke, we have the Amish. If you've not been down Morganza Turner Road, go down there. Any county road, I'm sure you've had your life scared because you've seen a dump truck on a 2-lane road coming around a bend on the left side of the road. So I don't care how careful they have their transportation plan, we know that trucks don't stay on that. And Morganza Turner Road is small as it is. If they're coming down that hill, around that bridge, right at the base of that Amish farm, who's to say that there's not going to be an accident? Morganza Turner Road simply is not designed for this type of operation. And as she said, our home values are going to plummet. $200,000 in tax revenue for trucks, great. But we bring in property taxes. We bring in sales tax. We purchase. But if we leave, that's revenue that the county is going to miss out on. Thank you.
Okay, just a second. Board members have any questions?
I don't have a question really, but I have a comment. I'm not saying that this is going to be approved or denied. I don't know. But I do know that if there is a problem, if this is approved and there is a problem, we can be back here again, right in front of this board, because we've had that happen before to where the trucks were making such noise that when how often do they come up for renewal?
Well, once approved, the conditional, unless you place a condition upon it, as long as the use continues and it's not abandoned for more than a year, it does not expire.
But I know we've had a case where, I forget the gentleman's name, complained about the noise in front of his house. And then Mr. Sloan was made to, trucks weren't allowed to enter Friendship School Road. They were allowed to exit, but they weren't allowed to enter. I know we changed how it operated. I don't know how that came about, but I know we did it. I know this board did it.
Understood. I was not a party to that case, so I can't answer that question.
But what I'm trying to say is, if there is a problem, you write it down, and it can be taken care of.
An alleged violation of a conditional use certainly can be investigated.
Yes.
And enforcement is, if planning and zoning will enforce it if they find wrongdoing?
That's one of our jobs.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else?
Mr. Hack, a question on the water. You said you had surface water going into a water tank. Don't most of your homes have wells?
No, we do have some that are on wells and some that are on city water. So we have a combination neighborhood. We have several homes, I think 20 homes that are on wells, and then the rest are on Metcom. But
Okay.
that tower is fed through the spring at the base right there at St. Clements Creek.
Okay, so you think it's about half and half as far as Metcom and wells?
75-25, 25% on wells, the rest is on the Metcom. But we're at the base of where this plant or where this mine is going to be. That runoff would come down into St. Clements Creek, there in Morganza Turner, that feeds, and it goes right behind my house. That creek goes right behind my house. It feeds a stormwater pond that is fed by a natural spring. So that's where our drinking water comes from, that area. So any runoff that seeps into that groundwater is going to come eventually into either the homes that have wells or the homes that have water tower.
I shouldn't do this, but the well, the water supply for the Metcom system is from a deep well that's drilled into a confined aquifer, which means it has a clay layer above it and a clay layer below it, so that there's no infusion of materials into it. That well's probably 400 or 500 feet deep. Just a clarification.
Thank you, Mr. Hack.
Thank you, sir.
Hold on, one more question.
I have a list of those that signed up. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Same, as at HOA, you said you're the HOA VP, right?
Yes.
Okay. Did the HOA reach out to Sloan to express any concerns? Did Sloan contact the HOA?
I don't know if they've contacted the HOA, and we just actually had a new board installed. So I know that the previous president of the HOA had submitted a letter. I do not know if he was in contact with
Yeah,
Sloan.
I've got his letter up, so it doesn't say that happened, but I've got a method to my madness here. Thank you.
To repeat, I have a list of everybody that signed up before you came into the room. I don't know if this is a speaker's list or just to let you know that you're here to stay informed of the case as it goes along. So if I call your name and you don't want to speak, just let me know. The next one we have on the list is Andrew Grant. Not here, okay. Sherry Thompson.
Well, I'm going to let my daughter speak
Okay, that's fine.
for us tonight. We've had our eyes dilated.
Could you state your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Laura Thompson. Address is 399.
Can you tilt the microphone on?
My name is Laura Thompson. Address is 39951 Mrs. Graves Road. My parents live in the Glebe Run development. They have,
If you could, before you get started, could you raise your right hand and take the oath? Do you declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony, responses, and statements you may give will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may proceed now.
All right, my parents have the same health concerns that many of the other residents have expressed. A couple other questions. Mr. Keeley, the person that did your traffic study, what are his certifications? And we're curious, has he ever taken a ride in a 10-wheel dump truck? Has anybody ever taken that path that dump trucks are going to take?
Ms., would you state the question again, please?
We are curious if Mr. Keeley, I understand he works and has taken care of the traffic study. Has he taken a ride in one of these 10-wheel dump trucks to see the safety risks involved? The fact that there are no shoulders in terms of how school buses, emergency vehicles will pass these dump trucks? And what will happen if one of these dump trucks breaks down in the middle of the road? Or Morganza, because they definitely weren't designed.
Well, to answer part of your question, I've been in big trucks before, all over the world, by the way. But as far as going down that road, we're almost prohibited to do site visits. There are exceptions, but I've been on the board for a couple of years, and we don't do site visits. And there are some reasons for it. Some I agree with, some I don't. But we don't do site visits. But yes, I've been in big trucks all over the world.
Okay. Other questions and concerns that we have, as well as the other health and safety issues with regards to the road, as well as the 3-notch bike trail. My family, myself, I go down and visit, and we all walk to the trail. There are bald eagles that we have seen. During the last hearing, I understood that they're wiping out the entire tree line. There is the Bald and Gold Eagle Protection Act. You're not to disturb any nest, whether you see an eagle in it or not. And we've had several of the neighbors. Some actually have photos. One actually recently just told us that they saw them feeding on a dead deer. So that's another concern that we have. Also going back with regards to, they said the number of trips that they were going to make. We called Sloan Gravel and spoke with an employee there. They told us that Sloan has a total of 13 dump trucks. According to his testimony, he said that he plans to make 125 trips a day. We're trying to figure out how that is possible if you only have 13 dump trucks. One of the gentlemen testified before that the residents down here were going to benefit, that it was going to keep cost lower because, they would be selling gravel to the local community. But based on these numbers, it seems impossible that he would be able to cover this number of trips in one day, which means they would be contracting them out. And how do we know where that gravel is going? We don't know that gravel is going to stay here in the community, and he can't control the markup on that gravel. And another statement that we have with regard to the Amish safety. I can testify several of them live really off of Morganza Turner Road. I know I watch for them every time I come to visit my parents, which is every week. In addition, the folks on the bike path, I know that you've heard previously, a lot of people don't press that button. I can tell you that I slow up even at night. I've seen people at dusk on that trail, whether you're supposed to be on it or not. I slow up. I've seen families, kids just got their Walkmans on or riding their bike. It's just a fact. I mean, I slow, and like I said, I've been on the bike trail myself, and I can tell you, I hit the button, and I run across that street because I'm afraid of somebody coming up over that hill. In fact, we even called and inquired, could you put the signs back further? And we were told by the county, that's standard procedure until something happens. This is code, where we're to put the flashing lights for the bike path. And we do know there was somebody, an Amish person that was killed October the 27th accident already has happened. Maybe not on Merganza, but we're also concerned for their safety as well as ours and the health issues.
Okay, that's, thank you very much. Do the board members have any questions? No.
No, sir.
Mine's to Luggum, Harry. With the law that you referenced in regards to the Eagles, does that change any of the testimony? Does that change anything we need to consider here?
Well, there projects that go through the technical evaluation committee include the wildlife natural heritage agency with the Maryland state, and so they would report back, and we can look at the record of what the comments were with the technical evaluation committee, but they would report back if they thought there was need for further investigation of a proposed development project.
So if they objected or anything, they would have said it?
Yes, and it would have been, so I'll dig for those comments while the public testimony is taken.
Yeah, if I remember from my days, the departments of natural resources that Harry refers to, they have lists of active and open used eagles nests, so they know where they're located within the county.
Okay. Thank you.
The only last question is too, what is the stopping do you know the stopping distance of that truck, of a loaded dump truck, by the posted speed?
Actually,
I'm sure Mr. Longmore can get some idea before this is over with, and we'll get that addressed.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now, Lawrence Thompson, did he also want to speak? Yes. Could you state your name and your address?
My name is Lawrence Thompson, live at 39951 Mrs. Graves Road, Mechanicsville.
Well, if you would raise your right hand, do you declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony, responses, and statements you may give will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may proceed.
I have a few comments in regard to the statement made prior, about the money Mr. Sloan term used donates and that and the other to the county, for taxes. This is a law for, road use and that and other for a large vehicle and that and other. It's not, the way he made it sound to me is like he is giving it to charity, if you will, to the county. But this is law. He has to, pay the tags on the dump trucks. I don't know right offhand what they are right now and that and the other, but that's what he's paying for, the road use for those dump trucks and that and other with, with those tags. And the gentleman who did, the safety analysis, I had a number of questions. I submitted a email to you all. Matter of fact, I think in total there's 17 questions, okay, to that gentleman about his report and that the other, about the facts in it. And here again, I guess tonight we don't have time to go into 17 questions, but, one of them, his background. Does he have a college degree in this area of expertise that he's quoting on? Do you know?
Right offhand, I don't know.
Pardon?
I don't know.
Well, see, this is, problematic to me because if you all don't know, sitting here on this board, I could sit and write whatever I want on a piece of paper. Now, just to be perfectly frank about this, you can take a smooth lawyer, and this happens every day in every court across the land. He can make a murder case sound like it really was nothing, just because of the fact of his education, play on words, whatever you want to use and that and the other, whatever. And people go for it based on, how he words things. And this is my point about, what he has written up and that and the other, and the number of questions I had in regard to, like you say, the report that he stated. About the site of coming off the mine site, okay? He stated some particular numbers, right and left, okay? But Then he brushed off real quick, got away from it. He didn't really go into detail in terms of, actual footage, in terms of more so from the side going out to 235, because you go around the curve, and I don't know if any of you gentlemen on the board or lady have gone on that route to actually see what I'm actually telling you and that and other. You can't see that bike path. Okay, now understand here again. It's like it's like the guy who invented the ladder. Okay, he got sued so many times because of idiots using the ladder for everything but what it was designed for, standing on the top run, putting it on power lines and whatever. So he had to put all these stickers on the ladder to prevent and keep from him being sued by the people who bought the ladder. And by where I'm going with this is, understand there is signage on that bike path that says people using it must push that button to activate that light. I understand that very well. I had a long discussion when the bike path was initiated and that and other with the director of the park and planning and that and other about some issues about that. And he basically told me, if you choose to go across Morganza Turner Road without pushing that button and you get struck by a car, it's on you. Now, that's a pretty awful answer to give to someone and that and other. And with that in respect, how would you want that on your conscience if you go around that curve and you have a family who's out for a nice time and they got 2 or 3 small kids out in front of them, the wife and husband are talking and whatever, and as kids do, they scurry off by themselves and they dart across that street without pushing that button, and you hit one of them and kill them. Is that going to make you feel well because, hey, you're not going to be sued because, hey, there's a sign there that says you must do? And in this particular entrance from the bike path across Morganza, like I said, I've had several conversations. There are a couple modifications, and I'm not an engineer. I don't have an engineering degree, but I got common sense. It could be made to that to prevent pretty much anyone from riding their bicycle from either side across Morganza. You would literally have to get off of the bike and walk it. But you know what the reply is? It costs money. It costs money to do it. Well, are these people who use the bike path their lives not worth the county money?
We're close to the 3 minutes, so if you could start to wrap up, please.
Well, that's pretty much all, I have to say in 3 minutes. 3 minutes is not enough. I could stay here for a half hour.
Okay. Do the board members have any questions?
I sent all of you, and that another, like I say, a 3-page letter.
Yes.
Like you say, all these questions and what have you, and I knew coming tonight that, here again, at best, we'll get back to you.
Okay. Any questions from the board members?
No, sir.
Just the one that I've been asking everybody, and everybody in here will get asked this. Did you reach out to the Sloan Company, or did they reach out to you with any concerns? And I did read your letter, by the way.
Pardon, I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Did you reach out to the Sloan Company, or did they reach out to you at all?
No, sir.
To discuss any of this?
I have, matter of fact, I've tried to engage Eddie in doing some work for me at my home and that and the other, but that's been a year ago and that and the other. But, and here again, what we're discussing and talking about, it's not personal.
No.
Hey, this is strictly business in the sense of him, and I understand him trying to make a living and so forth and so on. But in reality, is it really fair that this project can ruin so many other lives to get at this gravel when, if it were a national security thing in terms of they needed that gravel to build something for war, all right, hey, I understand that. I get it completely. But, the statements made in the previous meeting saying that, he saves the community money. That's not true. If he sells it to me directly, maybe. But once he sells it to, like, Howland Concrete or whatever, he has no control over what they charge for their product that he sold them. He has no control over that.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. The next person that I have on my list here is Paul Grant, and I see Monica Grant is also on the list, so I don't know if they're coming separately or we'll start with Paul Grant. For the record, would you state your name and address?
Name is Paul Grant, 39963 Miss Graves Road.
Okay, and if you would raise your right hand and take the oath. Do you declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony, responses, and statements you may give will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. You may proceed.
I came to St. Mary's County probably around 1990. And we moved into Glebe Run probably around 1999. So me and my wife have raised 2 kids. And I purchased this home thinking it would be, our retirement home. But with the gravel mine going in and the contaminants in the air, I'm just not sure if it gets approved. We'll probably have to move. Had a couple concerns. Talking about the bike path thing. The bike path, I believe, has already had 2 accidents there. And I've almost hit people there crossing, coming over the hill myself, because again, they don't hit the light, and you come over the hill, and there they are in the middle of the road, trying to ride their bike across it, and it's very tough to stop. So that's a big concern. The intersection at Route 5 and Morganza Turner Road, at the stop sign there, it's very tight. If a vehicle is stopped at the stop sign, I don't see how a dump truck can turn onto Morganza Turner off of 5. Especially a big truck like a 10-wheel dump truck, that'd be impossible there. Also, the turning lane at Captain Leonard's doesn't seem to be wide enough for, say, a dump truck there. I know that's not their direct route, but the truck's got to come from somewhere, so I'm sure there's going to be trucks coming off of 235. And I think that they'd be hanging out in the road right there, because that lane is very narrow. I don't know the width of it. I haven't measured it, obviously, but it's pretty tight there for a car. So I don't think that's an issue. And that's about all I got.
Thank you. Any questions from the board members?
No, sir.
Just the one I've been asking everybody.
Nope.
Nope, all right.
Thank you very much, sir. Monica Grant? For the record, would you state your name and address?
Sure, it's Monica Grant. I live at 39963 Mrs. Graves Road in Mechanicsville.
Thank you. And if you would raise your right hand, and do you declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony, responses, and statements you may give will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. You may proceed.
Can you step a little closer to my Sure. Didn't want to get too close because I didn't want it to get squeaky. So I just have a few things that I want to bring up. Several people have talked about the animals that they have seen within walking. I know for a fact that we have hawks and I believe it's a bald eagle's nest in our backyard. And I am in Glebe Run, which is right across from where they're proposing to put this gravel pit. I've actually sat and watched a bald eagle eat his dinner, which was a big black snake in my front yard, and neighbors actually walked past and went to the other side of the road while he enjoyed it. He sat there for probably about 20 minutes eating, and I'm gonna tell you, it was the most exciting thing I've seen ever. I mean, I never realized how big they were until you could actually see one in person. We have had a herd of deer that have come back year after year, where we've seen babies that have grown into bucks and does, and we see this every year, and we've been in this house for over 22 years. We've also had wild turkeys that have come across the backyard. So there's a lot of wildlife that could be, harmed in taking down some of these trees. I fully understand wanting to do what you want to do with your property, and I support that. But it's got to be within reason and within the locations. I don't feel having a mining operation in an area that is got residents and residential area is appropriate. There's just too many things that could go wrong. OSHA mandates are in place for employees of the gravel mines for safety issues. So if OSHA is going to put mandates in place for breathing for the employees who work in the mines, what about the individuals and the families that live around the mines? They're not going to have the same protection as the employees. So I think that also needs to be considered in your decisions. That's all I have.
Any comments from the board?
Out to Mr. Sloan. I'll answer that first.
Thanks. I've got your letter here. Very well written.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. The next person that I have on my list here is Tamara Blanton. For the record, would you state your name and your address?
Tamara Blanton, 39961 Graves Road, Mechanicsville, Maryland, 20659, and as well as 40102 Mrs. Graves Road, Mechanicsville, Maryland. I am back and forth with my father-in-law where my horses are.
Okay. Then would you please raise your right hand and take the oath? Do you declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony, responses, and statements you may give will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth? Thank you very much. You may proceed.
I've learned a lot since the first hearing here. I didn't even know about the trees being taken down. I can verify that there are eagles there. I wish I would have had a little bit more time to know that that was a factor with them taking the trees down. I haven't been on, there's a farm in front, which is a Buckler farm that butts up to where Sloan wants to do the gravel pit. But I wish I should have gotten a picture of it because it's right there, the eagles feeding on a deer. So maybe if this continues, I'll send you that picture. Did not know about that. And as everybody else has said, Morganza is a tiny country road. There is no way that you all can say that nobody's going to get killed. It's going to happen. And hearing his statement, then after the tragedy, we would have to talk to him, and I think it was this gentleman over here speaking about then they would make an amendment. But why do we even have to risk another casualty? Like somebody else said, there has been one I know of on the bike trail was killed. It's just a small country road. Both ends are horrible getting out. And so, yes, as somebody had said, when you pull into Morganza Turner Road, you can only pull in one way, which is by Captain Leonard's. That blocks if you are leaving Morganza. So what happened across the street, which was a casualty, where Corner Carryout, which is right across, a dump truck was pulling in and killed, I think it was a family, or it was young kids, whole family. I'm just asking, I do understand Sloan wants to make money. I'm just asking them to find another place where it is not going to cause casualties. It is, in fact, going to. And I don't want to be back here crying and saying, you know, yeah, you can do an amendment, but there's no way you can convince me that if you pass this, it's not going to kill people, along with the pollution, but that's like long-term. I'm talking about instant, it's an accident, but this is something that you all can control. And I can speak for everybody in my neighborhood. Everybody is against this. The only people that are for it is Sloan. I have not met one person, and I've been a part of this community for a long time. My father-in-law has been a farmer. Of course, he's retired now, 81. We've been down Friendship School Road. I go there to get my horse shavings, and a Sloan truck is always crossing the line, getting it. You know, I'm not putting it that all of their drivers are like that,
About 3 minutes.
And, okay.
If you could start to wrap up.
Okay, that's about it. Just, there's going to be casualties, and I just really hope you all look into yourselves instead of about the money, about the price of life and the country life that we have. Nothing against Sloan at all.
Thank you. Any comments? Questions?
Usual question. Did you reach out to Sloan or didn't they?
I did talk to Mr. Sloan the first meeting. It was outside. So actually, it was this lawyer. I asked, I said, are you all Sloan's lawyers? Because I'd never met them. And I was talking to him, and I said, you know, everybody has a price. What is your price to not do this? And his words were, F you, I don't need to talk to you. So that was my...
I don't believe that.
Well, that's what happened. And I am under oath.
Any other
My
questions?
father-in-law was there.
Thank you very much.
I believe that.
Any other questions?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. The next I have on the list is Nelson Blanton. For the record, would you state your name and address?
Nelson Blanton, 40102 Ms. Graves Road, Mechanicsville.
Thank you. And if you would raise your right hand. Do you declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony, responses, and statements you may give will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. Please proceed.
You know, I've been listening to everybody talk, and the one thing that I ain't heard nothing about is the ugliness of having a gravel pit. And if y'all have been down Friendship School Road at the end, that's horrible looking. We don't want that around Ms. Graves Road and Morganza Road. I mean, that's ugly. And that's all been mined down there. At one time, I reckon it was a farm. But it's real ugly. Would that be what we're going to get? That's the only thing I got. I mean, I know the traffic thing, that's a bad thing, dump trucks and whatnot, but the thing that I'm thinking about is the ugliness. That's it.
Any questions from the board members?
No.
No, sir.
The same one I've asked everybody. Did you reach out to Mr. Sloan or did they reach out to you at any time?
No, sir, I ain't talked to none of them.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's see. It looks like it's Sean Morris. Maybe I mispronounced the last name. M-O-R-R, Morit.
I mean, apparently he stepped out of the room, sir.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Todd and Wendy Chatham? Okay. For the record, would you state your name
My name is Wendy Chatham.
and your address?
I live at 39830 Stillwater Way, Mechanicsville, Maryland, 20659.
And if you would raise your right hand, I will swear you in. Do you declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony, responses, and statements you may give will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Proceed.
Thank you. The applicant's oral testimony on the last meeting was, we anticipate 100 25 trucks per day. Over a 9-hour workday, that would mean 14 trucks per hour, or 1 truck every 4 minutes. However, the applicant's actual paperwork, which is in the file, states 20 to 50 trucks per hour. So that's very different than 125 trucks per day. So if there were 20 trucks per hour, that means a truck going by every 3 minutes. If there are going to be 30 trucks an hour, that means one going by every 2 minutes. And it does say up to 50, meaning that potentially we're looking at every 1.5 minutes we have a truck going by. So I do want to let everyone know the speed limit is 40 miles an hour on Morganza Turner Road. And one thing that I've noticed since moving to St. Mary's County is that speed limits are rarely enforced here, let alone obeyed. Negligent speeding drivers have destroyed my trash cans. They've destroyed mailboxes. Where I live, and in the back of my home is the creek that people cross over, and there's a hill that goes down to the creek. And his blue dump truck, almost every afternoon between 4 and 6 o'clock, runs his compression brake down the hill. And it's almost like clockwork. So what I am envisioning now are up to 50 trucks an hour running their compression brakes down the hill by my house. And they're very noisy. I don't know if the council has ever heard compression brakes running by homes. I do know that barring an emergency, they're really not necessary if someone is actually doing the speed limit. But then again, people oftentimes don't do the speed limit, so that is a concern of mine. Also, as far as the 3-notch trail and the flashing light, today I was coming down Highway 5 from Mechanicsville heading south, and the light was flashing at the trail where it crosses Highway 5. And the dump truck in front of me didn't even slow down. So even if a light is flashing, it doesn't necessarily mean that's going to happen. If we're looking at potentially 20 to 50 trucks per hour, just with human existence, there's a potential that even if that light's flashing, it can be missed. And I know that you all aren't allowed to make trips, but from when you can see the flashing light, if you even go up over the hill, it is a very, very short distance. So I have a tiny little car, and maybe I could probably stop. But a truck that is carrying 35,000 pounds worth of gravel would not be able to. So even with a light flashing, it's not a guarantee that people are going to see it. As for needing more gravel to make growth cheaper here, I would like to suggest perhaps growth management. My example is that the Ford dealership had a perfectly good store on Great Mills Road. But instead, for some reason, the county allowed them to just chop down more trees and put in an even bigger parking lot. And now there you have a bigger parking lot with more trees chopped down, and now there's a new empty parking lot sitting at Great Mills. So maybe managed growth is another way to reduce the amount of gravel that needs to be brought into the county. My other concern is that we have this increase of buzzards because more and more animals are getting killed. And, you know, that's just a thing that comes along with deforestation. And so the bummer is that the beauty of St. Mary's County is just really disappearing quickly. And I realize that Morganza Turner Road is zoned as a rural preservation district that allows for mineral extraction, but really for all intents and purposes, it's a residential street because on one side of the street you have the farms, and on the other side it's just homes.
Okay,
so
well,
it really is a residential
That's about the
road.
3 minutes. Could you
Thank
wrap
you,
it
sir.
up?
All right then.
That's it?
That will be it.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Does the board members have any questions?
No, sir. Just the one I've asked everybody. Did you reach out to Sloan, or did they reach out to
No,
you?
I'm not going to confront Mr. Sloan about his compression brake going by my house every day.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Todd, does Todd want to? Okay, thank you. And then I'll go back to Sean Mari. Okay, come on, your turn. Did you want to speak? No? Oh, okay. Evelyn Sloan, Edward Sloan. Looks like it's Edwell Sloan. Okay, we'll come back to that. Austin Sloan? No? Dylan Sloan? Okay. And I can't read the last one. Gron I'm sorry, I messed that up. Okay. Would you state your name and your address for the record?
I'm Grant Pate, 39960 Mrs. Graves Road, Mechanicsville, Maryland, 20659.
Okay, would you raise your right hand and take the oath? Do you declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony, responses, and statements you may give will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you very much. Please proceed.
I was just worried about the environment and what it'll do to the animals around the area. My mom has Lyme disease and the pollutants in the air. We've been here since 1999, and we just didn't know that this would destroy the environment and the animals, and we have animals all over. We have chickens, goats, and we have neighbors that like to take naps in the middle of the day, and the noise and the pollution is just, we're not comfortable with it as a community, and we were wondering if there could be anything done about that where you guys can get what you want and we can get what we want. That's pretty much it.
Okay, do the board members have any questions?
No.
No, sir.
Just the one I've asked everybody. Did you guys reach out to the Sloan Corporation? Did they reach out to y'all?
No.
Thanks.
That's the names that I have on the list. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? Would you check the phone and see if anybody's...
Do you want to give the phone number again?
Yes, I can. I can do that. Thank you for reminding me. And if there is anybody out there that's listening on YouTube or the county's website, if you would like to call in, the number is 301-475-4200, extension 1234.
Excuse me, sir. Is there a chance to get a second bite of the apple?
Well, we start... Wait till we finish the phones, and I'll come back to you then, okay?
Since, there are a number of people that you called that, for whatever reason, didn't want to speak.
Yeah, let me get the first-time callers, and then we'll come back to you for the second time.
All right, thank you, sir.
Board of Appeals.
Miss Young, do we have any callers?
I do. I noticed a couple of the people on the list had spoken previously, and this one is also one who has spoken previously.
That's okay. We'll take their call.
Okay. On Park 1.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello?
This is Board of Appeals. Can I have your name and number or name and address for the record?
My name is Thomas Buckler. My address is 40065 Mrs. Graves Road, Mechanicsville, Maryland, 20659.
Okay, Mr. Buckler, we're going to give you the oath, and then you may proceed with your 3 minutes.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Buckler, this is Dan Nickniowski, the chairman of the board. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, do you declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony, responses, and statements you may give will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Well, thank you very much. You may proceed.
All right, I was able to speak virtually last time and luckily enough to do it again this time as well. I just wanted to reiterate the things I brought up last time. Main concern, the farming operation that my brother and I operate, like I said, from one end of Morganza Turner Road to the other. The difficulty moving machinery up and down this road is already a big enough headache without all the added traffic of the dump trucks. As I told you before, I've already been involved in an auto accident this year on Morganza Turner Road while I was trying to operate a tractor. And I've also had 2 near misses with impatient drivers. Then, like I said, the property runs parallel to my parents' farm. My wife and the kids and I, we utilize that farm, the road that separates the 2 properties all the time. We're not going to have that luxury anymore once they start mining, as well as the fact that we were poised to build on my parents' farm And once we caught wind of the gravel pit situation, we moved. I chose not to build, which had been a lifelong dream of mine. Furthermore, I've found out that that property that they want to mine was previously owned by Cheney, which is another mining company. And after they dug test holes all over the property, they deemed that the property wasn't suitable to dig because there wasn't enough gravel there. And since I'm under oath, my father was approached by Randy Sloan about digging his property. My father let them do test holes out on our property, which had an abundant amount of gravel. And per Randy, he even said himself that that property doesn't have much gravel there at all until you get close to my father's property line. So that goes in conjunction with what Cheney had said. So why are they even digging it if there's not that much material there? And the only other comment I had is there's two gentlemen in the back row that I'm watching on YouTube, one in a blue blazer and another in a black pullover. And their smirking and eye rolling has been very juvenile and unprofessional, and they are part of the Sloan entourage. I just thought I'd let everybody that they're sitting behind know that they're laughing at them as they give their testimony. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Buckler. If you hold on a second, do any of the board members have any questions?
No, sir.
No.
I think I've actually asked the question to him before, is did you reach out to Sloan, and it sounds like you've already talked to some of the Sloan family. So I think your answer would be yes, if you've expressed your concerns to them.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Did you reach out to the Sloan family, or did they contact you? It sounds like you've already had that conversation with them about your concerns for the property.
No, I not. I'm really having a hard time hearing you, buddy.
Let's see if I can reiterate.
Sir, did you express your concerns directly to the Sloans?
No.
No, about the gravel pit for us building the house.
For the gravel pit in general.
Like I said last time, I'm neighborly to them. You wave, small talk conversations, but never spoke of the gravel operation. I, like everybody else, didn't want to mix business and pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there another caller?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Buckler.
And one more thing I did want to add, the comment that Ms. Blanton made about what she was told, I was within earshot of that conversation, and it was Eddie Sloan that told her that. So I am under oath too, and I can vouch for what he told her. So thank you for your time. I appreciate your opportunity.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
235.
Board of Appeal.
Ms. Young, do we have any more calls?
I don't have any at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I believe then we'll go back to Mr. Thompson, is it? I would remind you, you're still under oath.
Sir.
And also remind you.
Yes, sir.
3
I'm
minutes.
under oath. What do you call it? The only thing I wanted to bring up, the environment. The sitting president of the United States just came back from a climate accord to reduce pollution. And part of that was gasoline, diesel trucks. You, sir, said you've driven large trucks all over the world?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Are you familiar with the word or the terminology coal burner?
Yes. I've driven trucks in Japan, Saudi Arabia,
Are
Turkey.
you familiar with that term?
Yes.
Could you
No.
explain to the
Go
board
ahead.
what that term means?
No.
Okay, basically what the coal burner terminology is. It's all the black emissions, soot and stuff that comes out of a diesel dump truck or any diesel vehicle and any other. And I'm sure at some point in your lives, living down here in this area, you have had to experience going out on Route 5, particularly up in Mechanicsville, even down here too, it doesn't really matter, of getting behind one or two dump trucks stopped at a traffic light. When the dump truck takes off, a lot of them, I'm not saying all, a lot of them puff enough black smoke out that you and everyone else, and especially, doesn't matter summer or winter, suck those fumes in your car. I've been behind some myself where literally, hey, I had to lay off the gas and get away from the truck because it just, here again, it filled my car up. Now, with that being said, when these dump trucks leave the mining site and go out to Route 235, with the number of trips that he states he plans on making, how many dump trucks will be lined up at that stop sign to go on to Route 235 to go down to the wash plant? Now, you, sir, being an experienced driver, you know how long it takes, if you've driven a dump truck, as you say, or a large truck, how long it takes for a vehicle of that size and weight pulling out onto a highway that the speed limit is 55 miles an hour, okay? Once he pulls out there, his objective is to get that vehicle out on that road. Does he really care what's coming behind him in terms of the cars running 45, 55 miles an hour? Don't think so. Most drivers that I've experienced and been around down here driving these big trucks, I'm the big man. I got the right of way here. You all get over in the other lane. Well, sometimes you don't have that option. You know, traffic is such that, you know, you can't change lanes that quick.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Do the board members have any questions?
No.
No, sir. Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson.
We'll check for another caller.
Okay.
I'd like to add two.
Board of Appeals.
Yes, Ms. Young, do we have any more callers?
No, we have completed all of our phone calls, I believe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
David, was it? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Remember your please remember you're under oath.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to add two more quick things. One regarding the environment. Yes, this is going to be a strip mine. Yes, it's going to be ugly. There's going to be a lot of earth moved. And if you're not familiar with Morganza Turner Road, when you come off of 235, just as you get to the new brewery, whatever the new business is there, there's a sign that says entering the Wicomico River watershed. And that is important to our county. The Wicomico River is important to our watermen, not just here in St. Mary's County, but to everybody upriver, everybody in Charles County, and our friends in the Commonwealth of Virginia. This dirt, this runoff is going to affect the watershed because we cannot control Mother Nature. We had a deluge 20-year historic rain last month before. We cannot control that runoff. We can put measures in place, but dams fail, levees fail, ponds fail. And we have done a lot in our county to protect the Wicomico River watershed, the Patuxent River watershed, and the Chesapeake Bay. So that's another consideration I'd like the board to factor in, is what damage could this do to the Wicomico River and to our watermen and to our local waters? Thank you.
Any questions?
No.
Thank you. I believe then that concludes the public testimony portion of tonight's meeting. And what I will do is I'll close the public testimony portion of the meeting. And I'll ask Mr. Longmore to come up for his summation, rebuttal, comments, answers to questions.
Certainly, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I introduced the folks that are here both personally and on Zoom, and if there's any questions that the board has for any of us, we're happy to answer them. I was planning to ask a couple questions and follow up to the comments we heard tonight and at the last hearing, and I guess Mr. Keeley, if you're online and available, I'm sure you heard the questions asking about the type of your background and professional credentials. Can you share those with the board, please, and also the type of work that your business that you're affiliated with, Traffic Concepts, the type of work they
Mr.
perform?
Longmore, he was sworn in at the last meeting, so he still is sworn in.
Certainly, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
And he was sworn in and testified. So, Mark, did you hear my question?
Yeah, I did, yes.
So can you please share with the board your background and credentials and the type of work that Traffic Concepts performs?
Sure, I'm a project manager with Traffic Concepts. I've got 28 years in transportation engineering, 9 of which are in Harford County, 4 in Queen Anne's County. And I've been with Traffic Concepts for 15 years. I've got a college degree in planning, a master's degree in planning. I was certified with the American Institute of Certified Planners, and I have a certification with the Institute of Traffic Engineers, professional transportation planner. I do not have a commercial driver's license.
Okay. And Mr. Keeley, there was a question about the stopping distance of the trucks. I believe you testified about that at the prior hearing, but would you mind just kind of reiterating your opinion on that subject?
Yeah, I can speak for the stopping sight distance for the Morganza Road. Turner Road is posted at 40 miles an hour. We did a sight distance test using the design speed of 50 miles an hour. So the stopping sight distance required for a 50 mile an hour road is 425 feet. Intersection sight distance for a vehicle turning left from a stop position is 550 feet. The sight distance analysis revealed that there's in excess of 600 feet. So there's 600 feet of stopping sight distance at the site access on Morganza Turner Road. And that should be very adequate for a dump truck to stop before it sees an object in the road.
And Mr. Keeley, I recall you testifying at the last hearing that you believe that you testified about the routes that the trucks would be taking, and I believe you testified that you believe that the roads were adequate for the trips that those trucks would be taking. Do you recall that testimony?
Yes, sir. I did testify the roads are adequate. There's no restrictions on trucks. The majority of the roads are state highway. Morganza Turner is county road. Busy Corner Road is also a county maintained road, of which there's no restrictions on trucks.
Okay. Have any of the comments you've heard, either the last hearing or tonight, has that changed your opinion in any way?
No.
Okay. And thank you, Mark. Did you have any other comments or that you would like to make that we haven't touched on in my questions to you?
No, I do not.
Okay, thanks. We also have John Mayer on the
Excuse me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Can we ask Mr. Keeley a question
certainly.
now?
Certainly.
So I have 2 questions. Was that traffic study at 50 miles per hour, was that with a loaded truck or an empty truck?
No, that's just, so as I stated, the posted speed on the road is 40. So the road's designed for 50 miles an hour. So when we do it's based on measurements. So, and it's based on state highway criteria. So if a 50 mile an hour road, you have to have a stopping sight distance of 425 feet. So we did the measurements and we have 425 feet plus. So it's not based on a loaded truck. It's based on the design speed and how much sight distance, clear sight distance you have. And we meet the sight distance for stopping sight distance and also intersection sight distance.
So that could be for a car or a truck or any kind of vehicle?
It's car or truck. Yes, ma'am.
Car or truck. So in your expertise, can a loaded truck stop at that short distance?
Well, again, the stopping sight distance is 425 feet, so 50 miles an hour, that's the state criteria. So, I'm not, yes, the answer to the question is yes, a loaded truck can stop after it sees an object in the road at 425 feet away, it can stop.
Okay, second question.
And I say that's because that's the county that's the Maryland State Highway standard.
But you don't really know how long it takes a loaded truck to stop. Okay, second question. How wide is the Morganza Turner Road? The width?
I think it varies in width. I believe it's approximately 11 feet wide.
How many? I'm sorry.
One lane.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I believe the lane width, each lane is approximately 11 feet wide.
11 feet? And how wide is the dump truck?
That's each lane.
How wide is it? Yeah, so it's approximately 22 feet wide.
But it varies from 22 feet to?
No, each lane in each direction is approximately 11 feet wide.
Right, so the entire road
Both lanes are approximately, I'm sorry.
So the entire road width is 22 feet. That includes both lanes. How wide is a dump truck?
I don't know the dimensions of the dump truck.
Okay.
And Mr. Grace is on the phone. He might be able to answer that with Sloan Materials, if you like, Ms. Delhay.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions for Mr. Keeley. Mr. Keeley, this is Guy Bradley. In regards to some of the citizens' concerns about Three Notch Trail that runs right across Morganza Turner Road, during your traffic study, did you look at that area? Did you look at sight distance from where the flashing indicators are? Was any of that taken into consideration for the traffic study?
We looked at it. We didn't do a sight distance evaluation. I would assume when the county put the flashers in, that they did a study to make sure that the signal met county standards in terms of the signal design and sight distance. Otherwise, it wouldn't go in. The fact that added vehicles to the road doesn't change the road geometry, and it doesn't change anything in terms of safety or operation of that trail.
But I thought that use of the road does, but that may be a county question. I was just wondering if you took that under advisement when you guys were looking at the number of vehicles coming onto the road and how that would change the use of that road. Would it now present a concern for that area because there are a lot of pedestrians that cross that road there? Was that part of the question, or was that part of your study?
Again, we looked at the trail, but I testified the Santa Gravel pit would generate approximately 125 trips per day, and that's less than 1% of the total volume on Morganza Turner Road, which is, according to the state data, a little over 2,000 trips a day. It doesn't change the function of Morganza Turner Road.
Okay. The other question is in regards to a portion of the population that's not represented here tonight, and that's the Amish. Did you look at the use or Amish vehicles on the road, or did your study just entail cars and motorized vehicles?
No, our study entailed just looking at the essentially the sight distance, and then we did a road inventory of the haul route. We didn't look at specifics of horse and buggy traffic that, I presume are allowed on all the public roads. And again, adding 125 trips, whether that's truck trips or passenger car trips, doesn't change the functional classification of the roadway, of any of the roadways.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome, sir.
Are there any other questions to Mr. Keeley?
Yes, sir. I asked this question before, but I'd like to ask it again. In several of the letters we received, they talk about a 5-axle, 26-ton super dump trucks. Are those such a thing or not?
Sir, I'm not an expert on dump trucks. That would be a question for the developer, for Sloan.
Yeah, Mr. Richardson, I believe Mr. Grace, we can bring him on. He's on the line as well. I believe he answered that question at the last hearing. He's with Sloan Materials, so I'm going to ask him a couple questions. I can certainly ask him that. Are there any other questions, Mr. Keeley?
Nope.
Mr. Mayor, John Mayer is on the line as well. He is also with Traffic Concepts.
And he's also sworn in.
Yes, and he testified previously. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mayor, can you likewise just share with the board your training and experience in this type of work and what you do for Traffic Concepts?
Yeah, sure. I've been with Traffic Concepts for about 6 months. Prior to that, I worked 30 years with Anne Arundel County, the majority of which was focused on traffic engineering and development review. After retiring from Anne Arundel County, I moved on and worked 2 years with Maryland State Highway Administration. I have a Bachelor of Arts degree from the University of Maryland.
Okay. And I believe you were one of the authors of the letter that was submitted with the record. Is that right, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Based on the testimony you've heard tonight and at the last hearing, have any of your conclusions or opinions changed as to this project?
No, they have not.
Do you have anything you would like to add in light of what Mr. Keeley testified to earlier, or any contradictions you have with any of his testimony?
I don't believe so. I think Mark did a pretty good job of summing up what we looked at when we prepared our traffic analysis. I did notice that one gentleman that was speaking was concerned about right turns off of Maryland 5 onto Morganza, and if you look at the route, the haul route that we're using, that wouldn't be the case.
And Mr. Mayor, are you saying that because the routes do not have any trucks turning right off of Route 5 onto Morganza Turner, correct?
Correct.
They're taking Busy Corner Road once they're emptied and going back to the site. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Hold on. That's not true. That's not true.
No, that's not right.
They're not off of Route 5. They're not taking right onto Morganza Turner Road. We can pull up.
That's the only way you can get on Morganza Turner Road is off of Route 5. You can't get there.
It's going to Busy Corner and then right onto. You're right. I apologize.
Okay.
But not onto Route 5 from the wash plant. I apologize for. Can we pull up the? Is it possible?
We need a map.
That route so it's clear for the record.
That's the only way to get on Morganza Turner Road from Route 5.
Yeah, I just want to, and I'll pull it up and just show the routes to make sure I'm being clear. I don't want to misstate something.
I've lived here 69 yees, and that's the only way you can do it.
Right.
Took you long, and I'm not telling you how long, but that's fine.
Okay.
And it is. And to correct it for the statement, the trucks would take a right onto 5, a left onto 247 to Busy Corner, and it would be on Route 5 for a short distance before it turned right onto Morganza Turner. So I will correct that. Mr. Mayor, I think your testimony was incorrect based on the map. There will be a brief time. It'll be on Route 5. And we will, if we can.
Yeah, I apologize. I apologize. I think we're all saying the same thing. I just didn't explain it very well.
Right, so there will be that turn there, and that was addressed, but it will not be the full length of Route 5 that they'll be going down, because they're going to go.
Correct.
Scroll up a little bit just for the,
There you go.
so this is the route, and certainly if the board has any questions about the route, we'd be happy to answer them. I want to make sure the record's clear.
I'm good.
Okay. Mr. Grace, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
And Mr. Grace, I'd remind you, you're still under oath as well. You testified previously. You're with Sloan Materials, is that correct?
I am.
Okay, and did you hear a moment ago Mr. Richardson's question about, I don't want to misstate the type of truck that he asked about. Did you hear that question, Mr. Grace?
About the width of the truck?
Well, certainly one of the questions was about the width of the truck. Are you able to give an estimate of the width of the trucks that will be using the site?
I cannot give you an exact figure, but it would definitely be 8 feet or less.
Okay. And did you hear Mr. Richardson's question about the type of trucks that were in some of the comments that were suggested would be used? Mr. Richardson, do you have the dimensions of it?
In 3 or 4 of the letters we received, they talked about a 5-axle, 26-ton super dump truck. Do they actually exist?
Yes, sir, I believe they do. But Mr. Sloan does not own any 5-axle super dump trucks. And I don't believe I have ever seen one enter our mining operation.
Okay, thank you.
Or I should say gravel pit. There is an independent trucker who operates one of those, who hauls Mr. Sloan's processed material from the plant to locations up the road. He does not operate out of the actual gravel pit mining operation.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Grace, I believe one of the questions Mr. Richardson had at the last hearing was whether there'd be any tandem dump trucks, and I believe you testified Mr. Sloan does not have any of those either. Is that correct?
And my understanding of what he means as a tandem dump truck, I believe, is what we would call a truck pulling a pump trailer.
Right.
Which would be 2 dump bodies. And no, sir, there are none of those trucks involved in Mr. Sloan's operation. I would have to say I'm not sure I've ever seen one in St. Mary's County.
Okay. And there was, I don't know if you heard the testimony earlier, some questions from the public about the number of trips that are being proposed for this site. Can you confirm the number of daily trips that are being proposed, if you know?
Well, I believe the 125 daily trips is considered to be a max trip per day. And I would appeal to Mr. Sloan to verify this, but I do not believe it's very likely that that maximum number will be reached on a regular basis.
Okay. And I can state for the record that Mr. Sloan, as part of this application, is willing to have a condition placed on any approval tonight for the number of trips that he has testified or that is in the record that we'll be using the facility daily to ensure that that's done. And that is one of those things where an enforcement action could be brought if that was ever violated.
Excuse me, the 125 trips, is that 125 loaded trucks and 125 returning trucks, or is it 125 both?
Mr. Grace, can you testify to that, or I can ask Mr. Vuckmer to come up because I believe he has that information and he testified before.
I believe that is intended to be 125 round trips.
That's correct.
Okay. Where does the truck end up at the end of the day? It'd be an odd number then, right?
Yes, it would. Okay, again, we have Mr. Vuckmer here who testified before. I'm going to ask him to come up with an exhibit he has to address some of the concerns that the county has made. I don't have any specific questions for Barry tonight, but if the board has any questions of him, either from his prior testimony or from the public testimony tonight. But Barry, do you want to bring up the exhibit now, and then we'll open it to questions?
And again, Mr. Buckmer, I believe you're still under.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yep.
Screen one? Sure I can.
For the record, Mr. Buckmer has given staff a copy of a thumb drive that'll be able to pull it up on the screen. So in light of many of the comments that were raised both at the last hearing and tonight, Mr. Buckmer has worked with Mr. Sloan to go over a proposal that we think will address at least some of the concerns that were raised. So Barry, take it away.
So Mr. Sloan proposes to put in the 25-foot mining buffer a screening of 108 Leland cypress, which will help with dust and will fully screen the site from view. Once the mining operation starts, this will be downhill, and with the cypress trees in place, the mine should not be visible from the road.
And on the exhibit, can you just kind of describe, is it I know it might be obvious, and I'm not sure if we can see it on the screen, but kind of the green line on the screen and the green circles on the paper copies?
Yeah, so it screens the entire eastern property line from where the mine starts. It's approximately 1,600 feet of plantings.
And Mr. Sloan would be willing to have that placed as a condition if his project is approved tonight?
That's the way I understand it, yes.
Okay. So we wanted to propose that. We know that screening was one of the concerns raised at the last hearing and tonight. So Mr. Sloan did want to make that proffer even before the board asked for such a proffer.
That green line of the cypress trees?
Yes, ma'am.
And how tall are they going to be when they plant them?
3 foot.
3 feet. Okay.
So per the Arbor Day website, they grow 2 to 3 feet per year. We chose that tree because it's the fastest growing.
Any other questions?
Yes, I understand there's 3 phases. Not knowing the exact number of trips per day, but how long do you think it'll take to do the phase 1?
I would really need to defer to Randy for that.
I will, Mr. Richardson, and I viewed the testimony from the last hearing. Mr. Sloan, I believe, or Mr. Grice and Mr. Sloan through Zoom shared that it would be 3 to 4 years, I believe, on phase 1, is what I happened to review that this morning and remember that it's on the video that's online.
Thank you.
Before we move on from this, does this have to be an exhibit?
We would ask that it be made part of the thing. Thank you.
What exhibit would this be?
Good question. Let's see. Traffic exhibit 4, attachment 5.
Exhibit 4?
Mm-hmm.
Exhibit 4, attachment 5.
You want to share it?
So we could certainly plant bigger trees to start with. We could plant 5 or 6 foot trees to start off with, if that would please the board.
In reply to that, where's the operation going to start? Is it going to start out in the front by the road?
The first phase will be in the back.
Well, that should take care of itself.
After those 3 to 4 years,
right?
Hopefully the screening would be adequate. That was the hope and kind of the design of it, but
Question? The access road you show, what is the treatment of the Hall Road from the edge of pavement or Maganza Turner Road to the mountable berm? What is the treatment of that Hall Road, and what's the length of that piece, that little piece?
That is about 80 feet, and the plan is to build that up with gravel and pavement.
Asphalt pavement?
Yes, sir.
Is there an entrance requirement, a new entrance requirement for the road by the county?
No, sir.
So the existing entrance that's there will be used?
Yes, sir.
Paved over.
R20.
R20 is a standard entrance in the county's standard book of standards.
And you're going to upgrade the existing road that's there now? Are you going to upgrade?
The driveway, yes, sir.
The driveway, and what will that be again?
For that short portion there, it's about 90 feet.
90 feet? 90 feet of
Gravel.
yeah, can you say it again?
Asphalt.
I heard you.
graded R20 entrance.
Actually, if you're going to write that into the record, I would say it's probably about 120 feet total.
And after the berm, will there be a stone construction entrance? Have the paving from the road to the mountable berm, and then from there, a standard stone construction entrance.
So soil approved that as the construction entrance would be the Hall Road, which should take care of any packed mud in the wheels. But I'm sure Mr. Sloan would put in a run of rock there to help.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions from the board members?
No, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may, I'll summarize, kind of very briefly, unless the board has any questions of Mr. Buckmer or any of our other team members that are online. Again, Mr. Grice and the traffic engineers that are working on the project, as well as Mr. Hobson, are available
Any other
online.
questions? Any other questions of anybody?
No, sir.
Actually, so with this project, we've seen and you'll probably touch on it in the summary. We've got, 41 letters that have come into the board. We've had 10 folks here, 11 folks here speak, either on the phone or in person. As you heard, I asked the majority of those standing here whether they had reached out to you guys, to the Sloan Corporation, and if Sloan had reached out to them. I also went through all the letters to see if there was any kind of communication. Some people had done that. Some people had not. There were 3 or 4 letters that stood out, which were very eloquent and made their points very succinctly. There were others, they all had a common theme. It does not sound like that either side of the house has talked about an issue that's a neighbor issue. All right? These concerns are very real concerns that they've got. Sloan has a right to do a project, make money, and be a business, and they are not an evil company by any means. There are personalities in every company, so when that happens, sometimes conversations get heated. But at the same time, I think a lot of the concerns could have been addressed if either side had just reached out and said, hey, we don't want this. What are y'all going to do to stop this? How can we address this and fix this? I think that a lot of information could have been relayed back and forth, and a lot of concerns could have been answered, and very legitimate concerns, by the way. not just perceptions. There's a couple of very well-written letters in here that are just, they lay out their case. There's one from the Gattons that talks about how a project was disapproved because of the traffic concerns off of 235. There is one written by a Sloan employee that goes in and he spells out succinctly how well the corporation has worked to make sure that their trucks are safe and that their trucks are abiding by the law, and spelling out some of those concerns. There are some very well-written letters from other people with the concerns. This is the first I'd heard of the Eagle thing, things of those natures. But my whole sense within the community, this is St. Mary's County, we're not Loudoun County, we're not these others. We are neighborly here. There's a lot of great people, and the Sloan family is a part of that. So on both sides, and pardon me while I'm on my soapbox, I really think a lot of the concerns and issues could have been alleviated before they got here if people had just talked. And honestly, I don't know which way I don't know which way this is going to go tonight, but both sides have very strong cases. And I think from this point on, if people talk, I think a lot of this stuff will be resolved and the project will go one way or the other. All right? It's just, man, this is frustrating. We've been dealing with this since July. And this is, if I'm struggling with it, I can't imagine everybody else. You guys, this is a tough one because of the emotional response involved with this and the fact that the company has a right to make money, the community has a right to be a community. So I'll shut up now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the board is well aware, and I believe some folks that testified earlier mentioned, there are 8 standards that my client must meet in order to receive the conditional use approval. The first is that the conditional use complies with the standards of the district in which it is to be located and the standards applicable to that use. The property is in the Rural Preservation District, so that is the district that it's in. And there are specific provisions within our county zoning ordinance that I believe are cited in some of the materials that are written. But to note on one is section 31.1, which talks about the Rural Preservation District specifically. And it says that the regulations are intended to foster agricultural, forestry, and mineral extraction uses. So that's clearly within the purpose of the Rural Preservation District. That's one of the standards we need to meet. There's also a provision that I think is worth noting in section 30.4.1A, which talks about base rural districts generally, and RPD is one of those districts where there's a comment in the ordinance and the purposes of those districts to encourage resource-based industries, including mining, along with forestry and some other ones that are in there. So our ordinance does in the Rural Preservation District specifically encourage this type of use within that district. So we believe we meet the first standard. The second standard is that the establishment, maintenance, and operation of the conditional use will not be detrimental to or endanger public health, safety, convenience, morals, order, or general welfare. Certainly, we respect the opinions of the folks that have come out. We know that they're very heartfelt, and I think people are being sincere, and we're not questioning any of their beliefs on it. I will note that, as Mr. Buckmer testified to at the first hearing, this did go through the entire TEC process. You may recall him testifying about all of the various approvals have been granted by all the different agencies. The mining permit has been issued subject to the approval of this board. And one of the other assurances that was provided, I believe, by Mr. Grice in his testimony the first night, is that there are at least 2 inspections a year where the state comes out and does inspect all the operations. So this is not only an operation that we think meets all the requirements of the ordinances, it is one where there's an extra check in place that other uses don't have. So we think that that weighs in favor of that one. The conditional use will not, this is number 3, the conditional use will not be injurious to the use and enjoyment of other property in the immediate vicinity for the purposes already permitted, and will not substantially diminish or impair property values within the neighborhood. Again, we think that we understand that people have strong opinions about this, but there's no evidence in the record, and we don't believe it would be justified that this in any way will be injurious to the enjoyment of the community. We know that people feel strongly about that. I can hear people making comments behind me as I speak, and I know they feel strongly about it. But we would note that it is existing forest and agricultural use land. It is within again, the purpose of the RPD, and we think that the proffer that Mr. Sloan, in listening to the comments that were made, at his expense, is willing to try to make that right. And if there's other conditions the board wishes for us to consider, I'm sure he will. But we think that that will also benefit that. The 4th standard is the proposed use at the proposed location will not have adverse effects above and beyond those inherently associated with the proposed use, irrespective of its location within the zoning district. There's nothing about this property that makes it any different in our eyes than any other rural preservation district property. I know there was some public comment today about the gravel being on the location. Respectfully, I don't know anybody that would go through these hearings as contentious as they've been at times if they didn't think there were minerals there that would make this a good operation. Mr. Grice testified at the last hearing, being a representative of Sloan Materials and working there for many years. He said how many years, and I don't recall as I sit here, that you have to mine where the material is, and this is where they've determined it is, and the Rural Preservation District is where it's encouraged to be mined. So we think that this location is not unique in any way compared to other locations in the Rural Preservation District. The 5th standard is that adequate utilities, access roads, drainage, and/or necessary facilities have been and/or are being provided. Again, I draw the board's attention to both the TEC comments and the site plan process that Mr. Sloan and his representatives have gone through over, I believe, the last 2 years. That process has been ongoing to where we're hopeful that we're very near the end of that process, seeking the approval tonight. Also, I'd mention here again the inspections, and I believe and I may mispronounce this, it was the federal agency, MSHU, is the agency that Mr. Grice testified about, would be doing those inspections. So all of the roads that we've talked about all meet the county standards, and if you look at all the TEC comments in the record that were part of the staff report, there are no recommendations from any of the county or state agencies that this not be approved tonight. The 6th standard is that adequate measures have been or will be taken to provide ingress and egress following a design that minimizes traffic congestion in the public streets. I draw your attention to the testimony of our traffic engineers that have testified about that, as well as the TEC agencies that have reviewed this prior to us being here tonight that have raised no objections to it. The route was designed specifically to try to minimize the impacts to the road and to have the loaded trucks spend as little time on Morganza Turner as they would need to, given where the site is. It's going straight out to Route 235. I believe the testimony is it would be on the road. The loaded trucks would be on there about a mile before it got to 235 was Mr. Buckman's testimony at the last hearing. And the testimony of our experts is that the roads are adequate for this. We've heard about the lane widths. And I will note here, it might be a good place to do it. I hope the board recalls Mr. Grice testifying at the last hearing that Mr. Sloan has been in business for approximately 30 years, and Barry can correct me if that number's wrong, and they have had no personal injury-related accidents in that entire time he's been operating his operation, and he has other operations. People have testified about him here. I think that is a real testament to what this applicant does to take safety seriously when you have that many trucks on the road already, and they've never had a personal injury accident. And that was testimony under oath by Mr. Grice earlier. The seventh one is that the proposed conditional use is not contrary to the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan. We believe, in fact, it's supported by the plan. And I'll note that in section 5.12 of the comprehensive plan, it talks about mineral resource extraction. Principally, mining of sand and gravel is recognized as an important economic activity, and regulations shall encourage the utilization of these resources. And we believe that this proposed project not only meets the spirit of that part of the comprehensive plan, but also is on all fours with the regulations that have been adopted in the zoning ordinance to implement that. And then the last standard is that the conditional use shall, in all other respects, conform to the applicable regulations of the district in which it's located or the special requirements established for the specific conditional use. We believe that it does meet all those standards, and that it does comply with all the statutes as we've referenced through all the TEC comments that are before the board. So we believe that we meet all of those standards. And again, I sincerely want to say we respect the comments that were made tonight. This has been contentious. That first night we were all here was probably one of the more contentious beginnings to a hearing I've ever had. I will say to some of the comments about speaking with individuals, I will say that myself and several members, I think it was Mr. Sloan himself, did stay in the parking lot for I think 45 minutes or an hour after that first hearing, speaking with the then president of the HOA of Grandview Haven and just speaking to him about it. We didn't reach a resolution. He was still opposed to it. Mr. Sloan still wanted to go forward. But I don't want this to be taken as that there's been a complete shutdown in communication, because I did witness at least that one instance of it. Could have been better. It always can be, probably. But I did have the chance to witness that. I mean, in sum, we believe that this meets all the requirements. I attend a lot of these hearings, and I know the board knows that. Oftentimes, folks that live near a location come and oppose it. I've been doing this long enough to where I represented the folks when Grandview Haven was being developed, and a lot of people came out against that neighborhood being put where it is, and now the neighborhood is here objecting to another use being put down the road. They have every right to be here and raise their concerns, but I sincerely believe that the only way to balance both the needs of the neighborhood and the needs of the property owner is to make sure that the property owners follow the rules that are on the books. And we believe that we have shown, both through the TEC process and meeting all of the requirements and addressing all those comments that they have, and also in the testimony here tonight, that this application does meet those standards. So we'd ask that you approve it. And certainly Mr. Sloan is willing to consider and comply with any conditions that the board has. The only final comment I'll have, and I didn't have this prepared because it came up tonight for the first time, certainly if there are any federal or state laws relating to bald eagles or any other wildlife, Mr. Sloan will be required to comply with them. I believe all permits say you got to abide by all rules and restrictions. He certainly will do that, and if any of those issues are identified on his property, I certainly know that he will, and if not, he'll get in a lot of trouble, but he certainly would intend to do that, and that's just the first time it came up tonight. So for those reasons, we'd ask that you approve the application as presented.
Thank you very much. I think that concludes the rebuttal and applicant summary. Now it's up to us to start, I guess, a little bit of a discussion and see if we can reach a resolution on which way we think we ought to go today. Would anybody like to start?
I would say it's a public road. It's not a private road. It's not a zone, or it's a public road for everybody. There's school buses and Amish, public road. And RPD, it's encouraged for mineral extractions. They're following the rules.
So with this, I'm definitely torn because I'm very property rights oriented, but I also see what might be good for the community. And with number 2, number 3, and number 4 being prime in what I'm looking at, safety, property values, no adverse effects, that's weighing heavily on my mind also. So with this one, I can say this has been the most difficult case we've come across since my short tenure on the board and as an alternate. Also because of some of the things we've decided in the past where we have gone one way or the other because of the community concerns as well, even though the property owner had the right to do what they were going to do. When it came to the vote, the community swayed it one way or the other. However, this case is a tad bit different in my mind, maybe not. So the big thing here is, does the property rights guy in me win on this one, or does the community guy in me on this one win? It's a tough one.
One of the things I think we probably might want to look at first are some conditions to impose upon this conditional use. I mean, that's why I call it conditional use, is to say they have to do X, Y, Z, D, and see if there's a list of those that we can come up with that may mitigate or some of the concerns of the surrounding community. And I'm like Chris. I mean, it seems, probably shouldn't say this, but a bit ironic that, you know, the same community had a different problem 10 years ago. There was a different side to the story back then. So does anybody want to start off with trying some conditions?
Well, I was going to I've been jotting notes all night. And this isn't a prepared statement by no means, so I'll try to muddle through this. I'd like to thank Mr. Sloan for trying to provide much-needed services, but not just for himself or his drivers, for the whole community. I mean, the aggregates, it's all citizens. It's not just for a few. And I appreciate that Mr. Sloan volunteered to make that circle. I think if it was not for that, I wouldn't be in favor of this at all. Because if they had to make a left turn onto Route 5 coming out of Morganza Turner Road, I think that would be horrible. But by him volunteering to make a circle and not do that, I think it makes it a lot better. I appreciate the letter about the 30 years of service with zero dump truck accidents that Mr. Sloan has done. And I'd like to, I don't think anybody else has said this, but he operates off of Friendship School Road right now. And their main route is Friendship School Road and Maypole Road. And both of those roads have the same exact conditions with the Amish buggies and the no shoulders. I mean, it's very similar. And there hadn't been any problems. And I realize that nobody wants to deal with dump trucks. I mean, I don't want them coming down my driveway either. But something that's happened to me personally is I'm right in the flight path of the trauma center helicopters leaving the airport, and they fly over my house all times, day and night. And in bad weather, when it's cloudy out, and maybe they have to fly lower, but they rattle my windows. But that's a necessity. I mean, and I believe this to be a necessity. I think this is something that our citizens need. And I also believe that their project meets all the county and state regulations. And that's where I'm at.
My turn?
Yeah.
Okay. So I agree with Mr. Bradley. This has been a tough one. Personally, I don't think that Mr. Sloan has been able to meet conditional use number 2 or number 6, which primarily is the safety issue. I think what hasn't been discussed a lot is the intersection at Morganza Turner Road. That I know everyone's been talking about birds and deer and the trail and all that, but my concern would be Route 5, because that is a really, really tight turn there. It is also just a blinking light, a red blinking light. So you take your life in your hands when you go there. Back in August of 2020, Busy Corner Road was washed out when we had all that rain. It's still not fixed. We have 1,650 children and the public who use that intersection just to go to Chopticon High School. That's the only way to get there, unless you live on the Lawrencetown side. I just think that this is just extremely dangerous to put 125 trucks at that corner all day long. Just adding that there. The school buses use Busy Corner Road. They used to come out there. You can see up the hill towards Morganza. You can see up the hill towards Leonardtown. But they can't do that now, so they pull straight out right there, and they have to stop, just like you and I do. And that is a real hazard, that they can't use that. They would take that little cutoff road, that little... I did print off a map if you want to see it, but maybe you have one. But there's a little cutoff there. And the school buses would take that every single time.
It's a bypass.
Yep, because that's where they could see. But the way it is now, they're not going to be able to see. And personally, I don't want my grandchildren on a school bus that has to fight that there. So I don't think conditional use 206 has been met. Let's see what the rest of my notes were. And I do commend the truck drivers. My son drives a dump truck. It's those men who need to be commended, not necessarily Mr. Sloan. Mr. Sloan is going to meet the minimum requirements that we put forth. That, i.e., a 3-foot cypress tree, you may as well leave it at the nursery. It's not going to do anything for dust or noise or visual. So it's great, but meeting minimal is not good enough for me. So that's where I am.
Okay. Anybody want to try putting together a list of conditions that may make it palatable?
Well, okay. I think that's a better way to do it. Then I was wondering if you wanted to just vote on this and then see where we were and set the conditions, or you want to try to...
Well, I think we ought to think about some conditions first.
Okay.
I mean, we may find some things that change somebody's mind, or something else that tickled something in our mind that we want to add to the list. No, I took the time to put together a little bit of a list for a straw man we could start throwing darts at. The first one was a buffer around the mining area, and I think they came up with that tonight. I think the other part of that discussion is we've got to say where, from the property line, in the areas of the mining, we ought to keep at least a 100-foot undisturbed buffer. So we have the buffer now along the Hall Road that was presented tonight. And then we have, I would suggest, a 100-foot undisturbed buffer along the property line for the rest of the mining operation. That's number one. Number two is what we had talked about earlier, is that there be a maximum of 60 rather than 62 and a half trips per day loaded trucks. So we take 60, it'd be 120 trips, and only 60 of them are loaded. I think that's the only way to kind of define that, make it clear. We're talking about 60 trips loaded, not 60 trips loaded and unloaded.
The trips are round trips, though.
Yeah, they said,
But one way, when it's leaving the plant and going out to 235, it's loaded.
Yes.
When it's coming back from Route 5, it's unloaded.
Yes, I understand.
So that's what I meant to do, is try to distinguish that 60 trips going and 60 trips coming back. Okay? Again, that's just a suggestion. One that I think has been proffered by the applicant is that there be a site, water trucks on the site to help control dust, not only in the pit itself, but along the Hall Road. The hour of operations, if I'm not mistaken, were proposed to be Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m., Saturday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. for maintenance only, And I would ask that that include no loading and no hauling during that time also, and then Sunday, no operations. Another comment would be no burning on site. Another possible condition would be the new entrance would be per county standards, paved back. I think it was offered for 120 feet, asphalt paving back, and then a stone construction entrance after the mountable berm. As mentioned before, I think it's already in the conditional uses that we meet all other state and local approvals. No processing of gravel on the site. I don't think we talked about that, but I don't think it was intended, but I think we ought to make sure that that's in there. No actual processing on site. No sale of the product on site, just for use by Sloan only. And if they want to take it to the Loveville plant site and sell it there, that's fine. Perhaps I need a little help on the brakes. We're talking air brakes, no use of air brakes in the area.
Well, they're only going to be on that road for a mile, loaded.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that mile they're still crossing the trail and everything else, aren't they?
So those were 10 items that I thought of. The concern about the eagles and wildlife, when a mining permit goes through, and Barry, correct me if I'm wrong, when a mining permit goes to MDE, one of the things they will do is they will circulate that permit and that application through all the different agencies of MDE themselves. They will have a endangered species group take a look at it. Sediment control, stormwater management, all of those will overlook and oversee that. So I have confidence that the state will do a good job in keeping the pits in line where they should be, and to make sure they're restored properly. And they have a good restoration plan on the documents that have been submitted. That's my 2 cents. Those were the items that I thought we ought to talk about or discuss, and you all may have more.
I agree with what you said. I could go along with all what you said.
Is that 120 daily trips instead of 125? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Just divide it in half.
So,
But who's going to enforce this truck route?
Mr. Knight. If there's a violation of the route and we see loaded trucks going in the other direction and it's reported to Land Use and Growth Management, they will go through an enforcement process with Sloan. First step may be a verbal warning that, hey, it's been told, you've been seeing us, cut it out, don't do it. And then there may be other courses after that. Do you want that? I can read Harry's mind. He's saying, why don't you bring it back to the board if you want?
I'm sorry?
Bring it back to the board if there's a violation. Let the board deal with it.
If appropriate, I mean, typically a violation is handled through the municipal infraction. A citation is issued and they're taken to court in order to comply or else.
With all due respect, we've done a lot of setbacks for these car dealerships.
That's the next case.
I got you. But
Ms. Delahaye,
let me finish, please. And we find these cars parked right against 235, and nobody's enforcing it. With all due respect,
we're not receiving complaints, Ms. Delahaye. With all due respect, we are not receiving complaints. If we don't receive a complaint, we are not going to investigate. That's the.
You got to just take a drive down there. You'll see it yourself.
I can't do that.
I still think that this is a real safety issue. I really do. I don't, and if, set condition, then Mr. Sloan perhaps could fix Busy Corner Road so the buses could access that more safely. We can't make that, we can't make him put a four-way stoplight, and that's a state, but that's the next thing. It's a blinking red light.
If that's an intersection of a state road and a county road, we can ask that the county portion of the road be widened or be improved.
John Gruden.
I know the school buses make the turn, but everything's going to stop.
BPW.
Everything's going to stop
Mr.
there
Mills,
if you have trucks after
if you
truck after
wanted to
truck. It's going to be.
Speak, Donnie Mills.
It's going to be a mess. I just
You're thinking of the director,
we
John
haven't thought
Dietrich.
this through safety-wise. That's just my 2 cents.
Guy, anything?
I like the recommendations you have.
Any more, Guy? Anything
Yeah,
else?
I mean,
I want to
I
add the
agree with Ms.
condition.
Delahaye that the number of trucks going up and down that road right now, if that was something that we could look into, because they did say that that was a peak number, but what's a realistic number? Is it 80 trucks, 80 trips? I mean, let's get closer to what they actually are looking at. Let's see how we can make it safer. We're not trying to hinder Sloan and handicap them by saying, you can't do this, you can't make business, but at the same time, the community, I mean, you pointed out, school buses, kids, heck, my family and I use that trail, and we have almost been hit. It's a concern, it's a safety concern, and I think for number 2, for me, number 3, definitely the property values, and that's something, there's other gravel pits, so you guys would know, or maybe have a better idea how it's affected property values. And then no adverse effects. Those are weighing heavily on my mind. The safety is the biggest one. It's a messed up situation that the county, that we have these roads that we do. Everybody complains about all the different roads that we have. It wouldn't be fair to make Sloan, and we couldn't try and fix some of the roads. That's not right at all. But if there's a way that we can do it with the contingencies, limiting the trucks, or figuring out another way to do it, I think we should definitely put those conditions there and explore that option. So I'm looking now at the number of trips every day and what is realistic in the realm of the possible. I know you guys went high with 120, saying that that was an optimal day, but you also threw out there in the testimony that that is an optimal day. So what's realistic?
About 60 trips?
No, that was just
No,
half the 120 that was proffered by the applicant. Rounded down.
Time is money. I mean, time is money, and it's like the lady said, I mean, they're not going to adhere to 40 miles an hour.
Yeah.
They're not going to do that.
I drove that road the other day. When you're coming on that trail, I can't drive my truck over 40 miles an hour making that turn. I'll run off the road. I drove that just the other day.
Just a bad
When
driver.
you pop over that hill before that bike lane, you can't go over 40 miles an hour. And that's in my pickup.
But I mean, to compare Maypole Road to Morganza Turner Road, it's not even a fair comparison. Because there's more of traffic on Morganza Turner Road than there is on Maypole. And when Mr. Keeley, I think it was Mr. Keeley, maybe it was Mr. Mayor, said it's not going to change the condition of the road, it is going to change the condition of the road because now it's a commercial, more of a commercial road with all of these trucks rather than a residential road. I don't know if that's even a term, but with just homeowners, you live in that road. Just, I mean, mine's safety.
And Mr. Chairman, I don't mean to speak out of turn as to that. I think the 10 conditions that were there, Mr. Buckmer left to speak to Mr. Sloan, who couldn't be here tonight because of the rescheduling. That is a real significant cap on the number of trips that he was asking for. I think it cut it in a little less than half. He is willing to do that. He can make that work, even though that wasn't what he preferred. Because if it's 60, 125 was round trip what he was proposing. So 60 loaded and 60 coming back would really be 60 round trips, as I understood you. Did I understand what you were?
I took the 125 to mean 62 and a half trips out, 62 and a half trips back.
And see if it wasn't clear what he was asking for was 125 round trips, but so that was what he was hoping for, and that's what the application was. Mr. Sloan's okay doing what you understood it to be instead and do 60 loaded trips out, 60 unloaded back. So that's really cutting in half what he was hoping to have. and he's willing to do that. He can make that work. What he would ask, if that is a condition, that be weekly trips. So I guess that would be 360 times 5 a week. So if one day's a little busier and there's a bad weather day or something, another day, if that can be the weekly average, he said he can make that work. The only condition that was of significant concern was the 100-foot buffer along the entire property line, but by a rough calculation, that's about 4 acres of...
Not the property line, the mining area.
Okay.
Because there's a big chunk of the property where the house is southward that wouldn't require that. Whatever exists, because that's not
Okay.
going to be mined.
So maybe Mr. Buckmore was looking at that, just making sure he understood that.
So will the buffer be from where we propose the plantings?
That's right, from the end of where your plantings stop by the house on the east, I think it would be. Property line towards the north and then west, on the west side of the property to the end of the mining area. Now, there may be trees in there, there may not be trees in there, but as long as that area is undisturbed is what I was proposing.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can follow you. Can I bring this up and see exactly where you're?
Sure.
While they're discussing that,
Back here, along the mining, around the mining area. This area is to be mined, and then you get into this area, here's the buffer. Your mining area stops down here somewhere, right about at the fold. Yep, right about at the fold.
I think their concern is this is to be mined too, is it not?
Yes.
And see-
But here's, I'm saying this stays, and where that ends is you pick this up as a mine.
But just so you understand that this mining is only 25 feet from that property line.
But this is the buffer on one hill. That exists.
Okay, so you're looking for a minimum 100 here.
Existing, whatever the existing is. 100 foot, you're right, 100 foot.
Forest here.
This is the forest here.
Yeah, but this, for instance, from this mine line to that property line is less than 100 feet. So you'd have to pull it in.
Right.
There.
It's got some of that mining out.
So really the only impact would be here.
Okay.
We saw that as being 100 feet here, which was a enormous impact.
Yeah, 100 feet there would be.
Right, that's correct. No, right.
Thanks.
So in the event that we move forward, we're going to capture that as an example. Okay.
All of that one, get to know what this is.
Any other comments, questions, motions?
Can we put any condition for that busy corner road so the buses can use that road there?
For the Morganza bypass?
Not the one, it's that little one, the little road right,
yeah, the bypass, it's,
yeah, the bypass,
Is where?
right there at the end.
I was asking about John Dietrich.
Yeah, at the
I
end
thought that was in the works to
Morganza.
replace that.
Across the street
Mr.
from Morganza
Dietrich
Turner Road.
is the director.
Goes behind
and,
that little,
until the end of
antique store.
December.
Right.
Yeah.
But I thought that was in the works. I didn't, you know, I'd heard
Morganza bypass.
I'd heard that was in the works to get that
Washed out.
repaired.
I don't know if the county's going to rebuild that.
Right, but if Mr. Sloan does,
Well,
I mean, public testimony.
he's got lots of gravel.
I agree about the
Oh, well,
house.
that would be
That's what I'm
great.
saying, then the buses will be safer
so do you
there at
wanna-
that point.
Yeah.
Chairman, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Medinsky has come up with a question he would like to ask the Deputy Director of Public Works, who is on Zoom.
Who's that?
With Don Mills, right?
Yes, Don Mills, the Deputy Director of Public Works.
Yeah, I just wanted to know if that was in the works
What?
to repair that bypass. If it was scheduled or, you know, where they were at with that.
And if not,
Well, let's find out. Let's get the answer.
Mr.
to that.
Mills, did you hear the question?
You're talking about Busy Corner Road?
The Morganza Turner bypass.
The bypass that went from Chopticon Road to Route 5.
before we continue.
Yeah, Busy Corner Road, right?
Hold on just a moment, Donnie.
Mr. Mills, do you declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony, responses, and statements you may give will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
I was wondering what the status was on where the bridge was washed out. If there's any intention on repairing that anytime soon, or?
Yes, we do. It is still on the work list to get done. Design, I believe, should be finished up in December. It'll be the design of the foundation and things like that for this concrete box culvert. That'll be a replacement of what was there before. It's going to take at least 12 weeks to get the box delivered. So it's going to be out a little ways before we actually get to construction on that. But that is funded. That project is funded.
So that's coming down the pike?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So we're looking at December finished, 3 more months of initial construction, final construction after that. So it might be June, July before the earliest.
That's the earliest.
So it would be next semester, the spring semester of school, that would be the issue. After that, it ought to go away.
And it's going to take a while to get this mining operation up and running too. I mean, it's not going to start tomorrow.
When do they anticipate starting mining, do you know?
Do you know the start?
I don't know that. That's something that
I'm sorry?
we would need to defer to Randy Sloan for that. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah.
Make a motion?
Sure, we can go start from there.
In the matter of CUAP number 19-131-021, Sloan Gravel Mine, having made a finding that the standards for granting a conditional use and the objectives of section 51.3.82 of St. Mary's County Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance have been met, I move to approve the request for conditional use.
Subject to the following conditions?
With the following conditions.
You want me to repeat those?
Yes.
Yes, because I only got 7.
There will be a buffer around the mining area as shown on the applicant's exhibit.
For attachment 5.
For attachment 5A. And let's call that A because
Sure.
it's got the changes onto it.
So it's being passed around now so everyone can see.
The other condition would be 3
hours of operation?
No, a maximum of 300 trips, round trips per week. Right?
Right, 300 I think is what, you had said 60. So 300 loaded trucks can leave the site each week and 300 unloaded trucks can return to the site each week. I think was along the lines of what, so that would be 60 a day for the 5 days because trucks are not running on Saturdays.
So they give you the flexibility for a bad day or a good day.
Right.
But to be clear,
you go a weekly account.
Oh, that's what they were proffering, a weekly count, not a daily count. So just to be clear, if the order is made for enforcement purposes, it wouldn't be a daily count. A week's worth of count would take place to determine if there's an excess.
So one day, we could have 300 trucks.
Yeah, at an extreme, right, 4 days off and 1 day of 300, at an
I would do
extreme.
a daily, maximum daily amount.
That'd be fine.
No.
Wouldn't it be better to have a
that'd
weekly
be-
count so you could have good days and bad days, rainy days, whatever, and just have a total weekly count?
Yeah, that's what that was my motion.
Yeah, and that's what the
300 round trips weekly.
Yes.
That was
I don't like
my
that.
condition. Yep, okay, well, let's discuss it.
So the weather forecast says it's going to snow on Friday, so they're going to pile them all up on Tuesday?
Well, that's
No.
what we,
If there needs to be a maximum per day, that's fine. We
I
would
would
just
say
like
a
some flexibility if possible.
On any, but
That would be the.
Make it 75, with a maximum of 75 per day.
that's it.
Well, the 300 per week with a maximum of 75 per day, so that they can't have all 300 go one day, they can only have
That would
70.
be crazy. That'd be a caravan, no.
All right,
that's only 15 more.
Right.
That ain't gonna make up a lot. Well, make it 80. I mean, that's still dropping at 40 from 120. Maximum 80 per day.
okay,
Okay.
okay,
300 a week, 80 per day.
Right.
maximum.
Maximum, yes.
Right. On-site water truck for dust control in the pit and along the Hall Road. Hours of operation, Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. Saturday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. for maintenance only. No loading, mining, or hauling on that Saturday. And Sunday, no operations at all. Number 5, no burning on site. Number 6, the entrance is to be per county standards. The Hall Road shall be paved back 120 feet to the shown berm. And then there will be a stone construction entrance in accordance with the Soil Conservation Service details. All other state and local approvals shall be met. No processing of gravel on the site. No sale of products on site. And use of air brakes shall be limited, denied, minimized. Somebody give me a word.
I think we can do that.
How could you do that?
I don't think we can do that.
I can't?
We could redesign a truck?
Yeah, why not? Okay, something that could help us there then with the brake.
Well, in terms of trying to enforce, if there's not a specified quantity, distance, location, how would someone judge that they didn't conform to that condition?
Unless somebody has a better idea, I can drop that one.
Drop that.
Now, does anybody else have any suggestions?
Do we have any concerns about the water table for
The
people that
tree-
use wells?
Of the trees,
The height of the trees shown, the cypress trees shown along the plan will be, what did you say, Barry, 5 feet, 6
3
feet?
feet.
Pardon me?
He said 3.
He said 3, but he said they would do 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Okay, 6.
6.
6.
Do we have?
6 foot Leland cypress?
Yes.
6 feet.
And they
tall.
will be maintained and replaced if they die.
As necessary?
Yes.
That made 10.
Now we're back to 10.
Do we have any concerns about water table for the homeowners that have wells? They're not doing any gravel washing.
We have no control of the water table. So how do you do that?
And again, I think maybe we may need a presentation from maybe the health department about wells. Wells, even an individual well is more than likely 250, 300 feet down to the aquifer.
Okay.
There is above that a clay layer that prevents anything from going down. And there's a clay layer on the bottom that prevents this aquifer from dripping out. The aquifer is recharged up around Frederick, Maryland. And the water comes down into that seam of gravel and whatnot and continues to float in this area. The water in that aquifer is relatively old. And it is managed by the state that they allow so many taps into that at so many gallons per day per tap so that they can judge when that aquifer is going to be too low. And they maintain that they will only go down 15% of the aquifer's depth. The rest will be maintained for future emergency uses. We ought to get somebody from Health Department over to explain that better than I just did.
No, that was pretty good, and we actually do have a pretty good presentation we could share with the board on the subject of aquifers. And as Ms. Delahaye corrected me at the wash plant hearing, there are shallow wells in some of these communities, and but the wash plant was a consumer of water, and here, if you wanted to specify,
it's recycled, isn't it?
Well, they were also having a well and correct me if I'm wrong, a groundwater appropriation permit.
Correct.
Yeah. Because you have to wash the gravel. Here, they're leaving it unwashed and taking it to the wash plant.
Right.
I second the motion.
Who made the motion? Second? All in favor?
Aye.
No.
Aye.
Yes.
No.
3-2, the motion passes. An order reflecting the board's decision will be prepared by staff and signed by the board within 60 days. A 30-day period follows from the date of the...
They gave a width of a school bus from mirror to mirror is 10 foot. A width on the dump truck is 10 foot. And the road is exactly each lane,
Okay.
10 foot wide.
30-day period follows from the date the order is signed, during which any aggrieved party may appeal the board's decision to circuit court. The recording secretary will mail a copy of the order when it has been signed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You want to take a break?
Well, sure.
Or you want to,
Just wait a minute.
yeah, wait a minute?
We got permission to go.
You want to approve the minutes?
Huh?
Want to approve the minutes?
Sure.
Let's do that. Okay. We have minutes from the meeting of October 14th, 2021 for approval, and they've been included in our packages. Does anybody have any comments, questions, concerns, or a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion we approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. And we have no orders for this evening. And we do have a draft Board of Appeals 2022 monthly public hearing schedule. And that has been passed out to you also. We start with next month's meeting, December 9th, and we go through January 12th, 2023. Anybody have any concerns with this? Otherwise, I'll take a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve this schedule.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all very much. You need to start the next item, or you guys want to take a break?
We might want to get started and give them a little more time.
Okay.
At least open it up.
Okay, let's do that then. Guess we got to wait until Mr. Longmore comes back so that hears everything.
Oh, Mr. Longmore?
He just stepped out.
Excuse me.
You have the, Harry, you have the official copy of this?
If the one that they were passing around.
But with the one that was marked up?
Oh, here. Wayne had it.
Oh, my gosh.
You don't get to keep it for yourself.
I don't know where it is.
I'll recognize it if I see it. That's it. Green.
Oh, okay, good.
Or not necessarily, because that, he gave out a copy before, that's not this one.
How about this one?
That's the one.
Okay.
All right,
Good.
we'll make sure it gets in the secretary's hands.
If I crack, if I fall, somebody pick me up. Excuse me.
Are we in recess? No.
No, we're still alive.
You ready, Mr. Longmore?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. The next case that we have is VAAP 210038, Toyota of Southern Maryland. And I guess we're going to start with Stacy, Harry,
Okay.
presenting the case.
We've not been signed in, or I'm sorry, sworn
Come
in.
in.
Didn't I swear you in earlier?
No, because we didn't testify.
I'm sorry. If you would raise your right hand, stand and raise your right hand. Do you declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony, responses, and statements you may give will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay. Tonight, we're here to hear VAAP 21-0038, Toyota of Southern Maryland. They are asking for a variance from Section 63.3, the buffer yard, Schedule 63.3A, the buffer yard standards, to reduce a previously approved 30-foot Type C buffer yard to a 12-foot Type C buffer yard along Maryland Route 235. The legal ad was printed in the local newspaper, Southern Maryland News, on October 29th and November 5th, and the applicant posted the property and sent notifications to the neighbors within 200 feet on or before November 3rd. The property owner is 235 Realty LLC. Mr. J.D. Blackwell is here, along with Christopher Longmore as their agents. The property is also located at 22500 Three Notch Road in California. Its land use is mixed use, medium intensity, which leads us to its zoning of medium intensity mixed use district. The property consists of 7.223 acres. 7.223 acres. It has 2 existing car dealerships with service centers on each one. The applicant is proposing to remove the curbing within a portion of the existing parking lot adjacent to 235 to construct an additional 57 parking spaces, which will intrude into the previously approved buffer yard. The minor site plan has been reviewed by the TEC, or the Technical Evaluation Committee. Property is located at 22500 Three Notch Road in California, just north of the base gates, and located between Chancellor's Run and Great Mills Road. Land use map is medium use, mixed use, medium intensity. And the zoning is also medium-intensity mixed use. As you can see, adjacent properties are the same zoning. Here's the existing conditions for the property. We have the original Toyota of Southern Maryland car dealership here. And right along the 235 property line is where they are seeking the buffer variance. Here's the original state highway plat that set their right-of-way back farther than the adjacent properties. As you can see, we've got two triangular pieces of property here. This is an ownership of the National Mobile Homes across the street. And this property was owned by Mr. Millison, as he is also located across the street. So when they went to expand the right-of-way in 1974, it created, if they did just the standard 70-foot setback, or from right-of-way line, it would have created this little triangular piece left in Mr. Millison's possession. So instead of just having an unusable piece of property, they took it all. Okay. Okay, and this is their proposed buffer yard plan, and that's that little triangular piece of property, just to give you some reference. And they are proposing a 12-foot type C buffer yard along the 235 right-of-way. Okay, we have our different buffer yard standards for reference, A, B, and C. These are the tree plantings and what's required. And we also have the standards. And then I got each one individually for reference if needed. Okay? Any questions?
No.
No.
Yes.
No.
When the site plan was originally approved, and you had a transportation corridor and a commercial use, didn't that dictate a larger buffer?
When it was included in the attachments, when the car dealership was originally approved, it requested a buffer yard variance reduction at that time and was granted one.
Okay, so it was granted a buffer yard reduction from what the original...
From what the zoning ordinance would have dictated.
Which would have been 65 feet,
Correct.
type A buffer, B buffer, excuse me.
It would have been a B buffer yard.
5B.
And so that 65-foot buffer was reduced to a 30-foot buffer? And now we want to
Correct.
reduce it below a type A buffer to 12 feet?
They're requesting a 12-foot type C, so that would be planted more intensely than a type A. But you are correct, the width is smaller than a type A.
One of the TEC comments asked, what was the parking requirement for the site, and what will the parking requirement be with this change?
Hold on.
Well, the parking requirement is based on the use and the size of the building. So the building's not changing size, so the parking requirement has not increased, nor decreased.
It has not decreased?
Well, the parking, in order for the requirement to change, the dimensions of the building would have to change.
I understand, okay, so that would...
And they're proposing no changes to the building.
We can have more required parking on site than the minimum.
Well, you're using the word required. So the required parking is a mathematical equation based on the use and the size of the building. So with the size of the building does not change and the use does not change, the required parking does not change.
But the provided parking...
Right, the requested parking may exceed the minimum required. However, the planning director himself can approve deviations from the minimum required parking. So they're not seeking a variance from the quantity of parking spaces. That's not the subject at hand.
Right. Okay.
Can we go back to the map, the site plan?
Okay, the site plan, which, that one?
So the number of spaces that are being requested are on 235?
Yes. They're all located right
So.
in here, double parking.
This is a question for the applicant.
Okay.
So what are you going to, I guess, what are the parking spaces being used for? Well, I mean, I know cars, but display cars or visitors, customers?
I agree with you. That's a good question for the applicant.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I was just asking if there were any questions.
One more question. While we're there, is there a certain minimum area landscaping requirement?
Yes, and apparently the site does meet the minimum landscaping because they're not seeking a variance from that standard.
Okay. Even with the islands that are going to be removed that have landscaping in it?
That's my understanding. According to our commercial plan review staff, the only variance required is the buffer yard.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, sir.
Any other proffers from you all?
Or did you reach the end of the presentation?
Yes, I read the
Okay.
end.
Yep.
Next, Mr. Longmore?
That'll be Mr. Blackwell.
Mr. Blackwell?
Did you get his presentation?
No, I have not.
Okay. Hand her your flash drive.
And the name?
You can help make sure she finds it.
Okay. There should only be one file that you can open. Should be a folder.
I'm trying to find my files. Okay, and it's not reading it. Yeah, it's not reading it.
Is there a way for me to email it to you? Is that it right there? No, maybe not.
No, these are printers and. Okay.
Usually we don't have any trouble, so
It's not. There we go. Okay, the PowerPoint right there, Majak?
Yep.
Got it. Okay.
Sit down here.
Would
You'll
you,
be able to see
Mr.
your-
Blackwell, would you stand for just a second and raise your right hand?
Here, here.
Right there's fine. And repeat
Hello.
after me. Do you, or answer. Do you declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony, responses, and statements you may give will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Have a seat and go ahead forward.
Okay, so do I click them or do I just?
You just
look at
indicate
you?
and you get,
So-
I'll follow along.
Hello, thank you. My name's JD Blackwell, and as already said, I'm an agent. And I have been for several years now, as the Toyota of Southern Maryland and Team Hyundai people have been creating new infrastructure for their car dealerships. So who are we? Next slide. As I already just said, Team Toyota Southern Maryland and Team Hyundai. This is an aerial view showing what the site looked like a little more, about a year and a half ago. So you see the original Toyota site, the original Hyundai site, and a new site next door that we started developing at the very end of 2017. And while we're here, because this picture makes a really good presentation of this, if you see on the left side in front of the site that we've now paved, on that site you can see that there's our buffer is there, and so is the land that's owned by the state. If you look over in front of the old site,
you'll see it's much deeper, and that's because there's 30 feet of state-owned land between not the road but the curb and our property line, and then there is our 30-foot buffer that is in addition to that. So if you look at that right there, the left side meets the buffer that we're required to have in the state land. You'll see how that's thin, and on the right side, you'll see it's much thicker. So that helps illustrate that idea right now. Okay?
Well, while we have this picture.
Sure.
Because this is the problem with me, and I think Ms. Delahaye too. There are big vehicles parked in front there. Where are they parked at? I mean, what property are they on?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
This photo right here, I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 vehicles parked in front of the buffer.
The ones that are right next to Route 235?
Yes.
It does appear that they're parked on state land.
So they're parked in state right away?
Yes, they are. Okay.
Next slide.
Next page. So just as a preface to this and the further conversations, the plan that we've been pursuing for years has been changing, in part initially because of COVID, and then because of all the supply chain issues, and then frankly, because there's a change in the industry and because of different franchise opportunities. So those things have been changing over time. So we started one idea back in 2017-18, and our intentions today are very much different based on changing conditions. So what we're after today is a reduction in our buffer yard requirement. This allows us to meet, so Hyundai, which is a brand we currently have, and we intend to build on that site that looked like it was under construction. We originally intended to put something there, then we started pursuing a different franchise to go there. That franchise isn't going to happen for us now. So now it's our intention to we hope to put Hyundai and their new electric car franchise on that site. So we're looking for a buffer yard requirement reduction so that we're able to meet their dealership requirements and be able to build a new Hyundai building meeting their new image requirements and the new requirements to have a electric car franchise. Hyundai is introducing a new sub-brand called Ioniq, and we're excited about that, but there's requirements that they have in terms of the building image, which isn't really a subject for here, but more importantly, a total number of parking spaces. And currently, we don't have the ability to get to their requirement. So that's just a picture of the new Ioniq brand that's coming. And in theory, it's supposed to show up late this quarter. It hasn't arrived yet, but they've said there'll be 5 new models in the Ioniq electric car brand sometime next year. So this is literally our requirement list, and it tells us that what they require us to have for this particular marketplace, if you look at the bottom that I highlighted in red, is 308 cars. So back when we initially built the dealership in approximately 2007, our requirement for Hyundai by itself was 210 parking spaces dedicated towards the Hyundai dealership. Now, Hyundai and Ioniq, the new requirement for us is 308. So we didn't have enough, what we built then, to meet it. And as you'll see in a minute, even with the new property that we bought next to Wawa, all of it together, we still don't meet the requirements. In fact, even with the variance, we won't quite get there, but we'll get real close. So why is this an appropriate request on our part? We think the site is unique, certainly not the only site, but it's not very common that there be such big buffer yards between the curb line and our property line. When I think about other dealerships, like the Nissan dealership or the new Ford dealership, their properties come right up to those curbs or real close to them. In our case, it's variable width, but it's approximately 30 feet. I think it's about 28 or 29 on one end and close to 40 at another point, like where that triangle was. And then it comes back to about 35. So there is in effect, this 30-foot green space between the curb and where our property line starts. So this picture here is how the site looks currently. So we have the old dealership, the Toyota dealership, the Hyundai dealership, and the new site that we, for the last couple of years, thought we were going to have developed for a different brand. Originally, right there where I point the blue, that was where we thought we'd be putting a building. When COVID happened, we just paved it over to sit on it for a while until we figured out where everything was going. So this shows you our current condition, but even with that newly purchased area over there, we still need more parking spaces. We plan to build them a new building there, a third building on these properties. But to meet the requirements for the new Hyundai and Ioniq electric car brand, we still don't quite get to enough parking spaces. And again, you can see that there's a much bigger space in front on the right side because of that real big space that the state owns. And I should say, we've been trying to talk to them for years about purchasing it. The governor had a directive to various departments to sell land that wasn't needed or used. And so we thought that was going to help us because we thought we'd reach out to them, try to buy the land from the curb back, and that would make this a whole lot easier of a conversation. But initially I thought it was going to have some progress with it, but eventually it just sort of petered out. Nobody there seemed to care very much. But we did go down that path for a year of trying to acquire that extra land at the state that's just green space that's not really pertinent to the state. And I say not really pertinent. They are using it for some drainage out by the front edge. But it's very common for state highway drainage to be on other people's properties to have easements there. And so this is the site plan showing the two old buildings and the new area where the new building would be. And that green right there shows you the little bit of state land on the left. You bring the cursor over. So you see how much state land they own on that portion of us. But then back over on the rest, you see all the other state land on that side. Thank you. In this picture, it shows you our buffer on the left side in front of the new parking lot and new building, and the current buffer in state land on the right. And then for the next picture, that's what it would look like, the state land plus the buffer that we're asking for. That's what it'll look like if you were to grant the variance. So you'll see that it doesn't quite line up, but it gets more continuous across the entire front. And so that's the actual building that our architect's almost done designing, the one on the far left that says 283. That's the actual footprint of the building that we're about to turn in that meets the Hyundai and Ioniq EV car motif and size requirements for the building. And then that blue line in the middle is how we plan to divide up the car spaces. The right side will be the dedicated Toyota area. The left side would be the new Hyundai and Ioniq area. So on the left side, even with the variance, that gives us 25 more cars for that side than what we currently have. On the right side, we've got 32 new spaces to meet the Toyota numbers. And so that's how the car spaces work out. And so let me go to the next page. So we get to 283, our requirement's 308. We're hoping that they'll approve it because it's close. It's not all the way there, but it's close. One of the things that's important to them is to have everything on site. And one of the things that matters to us, it helps for it to all be on site. To answer your specific question, by the way, from earlier, it's display spaces. I think one of the things that Harry was sort of touching on earlier is that there's a certain number of parking spaces for the employees and that kind of stuff. But the rest of a car dealership isn't. They look like parking spaces, but it's really display space. So there's a difference between how much space we're allowed to have or need to park inventory, and then there's a difference for the category that's the functionalness for the building. So those are display spaces to hold inventory. And so if you were to approve the variance as we ask it, we get pretty close to the requirement. I also should mention right now that these parking spaces are impervious pavers. So it's not new, it is asphalt-ish, but it will be an impervious asphalt and stone system so that the storm water will go in the ground there at first. And then there's a whole lot of different parts to stormwater, and I certainly don't understand it, won't get into it. But the first phase of the stormwater management is pervious pavement, where the water goes in the ground out there. Okay, next page, thank you. And so we still have to worry about meeting our Toyota requirements because they also have a new electric car brand coming soon, as in 2023, called BZ, Below Zero. And we're paying a whole lot of attention to our parking for Toyota because we want to make sure we meet their requirements so that we obviously keep that, but we're able to get that electric car brand as well. So our current requirement for them is 321, and this plan would let us get to 311. So again, we're real close. Okay. So what do we need? We need to ask you to approve our motion to reduce that buffer. And so I think that pretty much explains it. If you would, can we back up to the picture that shows that picture right there. So this one shows exactly what we think it would look like with the buildings, with the new building we're about to turn in the architecturals for, as well as the additional spaces. And if you look up there where 25 and 32 are, that's the space that we're asking for. And I think that probably, since it's already pretty late, there's a whole lot more I could say, but I think maybe that conveys it, and I'll let you guys start asking me questions if you have any.
My biggest problem, and everybody on the board knows this already, evidently it's state right away, but I don't like the fact we approve a buffer yard and then brand new trucks and vehicles are parked in the state right away out in front of the buffer. It just doesn't seem right to me.
Understood. So as I act as sort of an engineering liaison, it's hard for me to address that. If that's something that you'd like to talk about, once we get done talking about the technical stuff, if you'd like, I can have the owner of the dealership is here. We can ask him to join us and we can chat about that.
Myself personally, there's no way I'll approve this unless we can address that.
Okay.
Because it just slaps me in the face every time I ride by there. And we go through all this, meetings and whatnot to approve this, to try to help everybody involved, try to help the county and what it's proposed to do. And then when you ride down the road, you see new trucks parked out in the front.
I completely respect that concern. And I'd happily chat with you about it, but I'd probably sort of be out of my arena. So if you don't mind, what I suggest is if there's other aspects of sort of what we're requesting, maybe let me talk about those and propose them, and then we can certainly talk with the owner of the property. I suspect he'll be very willing to address that for you.
Well, I don't know when's
So let's see if there's any other
appropriate.
questions from the board members. We'll
Yeah.
give them Mr. Blackwell,
Yeah.
and he'll come back at a time set to bring the owner back to do that?
He's here.
Here with us today.
He's here.
Here, and I'm sure he'll happily come up and chat with you.
So looking at the word space counts.
Yep.
And forgive me, I don't have my reading glasses. Your blue line, there's space behind that building there where you've got 2 rows of cars going up. So if you look at the map up there, your blue line that angles off just at the end, right there where she's pointing.
Yep.
What's that space back there?
That space is an area that we use for detailing. So if you look at the current, could you slide your cursor, bring it forward just a little bit?
Forward.
Go
Down.
straight over to your right.
To the right.
Right, now come down a little bit. So we have, right in that area, we have 3 bays where we do all the car washing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're doing there to sort of get the cars prepped and ready to go out. Now, if you move back to the space he's talking about, this area back here is an area we have to reserve for third party. What we do is clean and wash the cars. But over there, we have detailing, and that is where somebody might come in to put in a new windshield. So it's not all the other places are where we're parking, where staff is parking, or customers are parking, or display cars are parked. But in that area back there, we've got it fenced off because we don't want customers to see it necessarily. And it's not perfect. Sometimes they certainly do. We have to do it in other places. But that's where somebody might come out to do touch-up paint, or somebody installs a new windshield, or somebody comes out to remove tires to touch up the paint on the rims and stuff. So the site really doesn't have any other place where we can do that kind of third-party touch-up stuff. So we've reserved that corner back there for that kind of activity. It's where third-party people are doing detail work, other than the mechanics that work on an engine or the people that clean them for sale.
Okay, thank you.
And with respect to, I think, what you're hinting at with that, I have spent years trying to figure out how on these different sites to hit these numbers, because we've known it was happening. And the Hyundai number has grown over time because the opportunity to get the Ioniq electric car brand has just happened in the last 6 months. And originally we thought we'd put it somewhere else, but that isn't working out. So we obviously really care about, I won't say it's the first electric car to get sold here, but it'll be the first real brand. It'll be the first real multiple models, dedicated image, and all that kind of stuff. So we're very excited about being able to have it. So we're working as hard as we know how to get it. And just so that it's super obvious, there's a benefit to the business to have it all together. But there's also the logicalness of not having to go create something somewhere else, because that impact is much bigger than just adding on these spaces. In this case, it's not the greatest thing to have cars parked too deep, because you have to move a car to get to some, right? But it's very efficient, and it minimizes our overall, impact on other stuff.
Okay.
Like it would take 5 times as much land somewhere else to accomplish this that we're accomplishing in this little place.
You said there's 2 types of parking. There's parking spaces and there's display spaces. Are they the same size?
Yes, in general, yes. Yeah, the typical car space is 9 by 18. Mostly that's what a car space is, and that's what we've done here mostly, yeah.
So to answer the question, they're basically the same then?
Yes, they are, yeah.
Okay.
There's a few spaces that are 8.5. They're, for compact cars, are allowed to be 8.5. And because some of Hyundai is compact cars, there's a few spaces on our lot that actually happen to be 8.5 because it made more sense to do a few of those, based on how much room we had to work with. But by and large, the lot, these spaces, 90% of them are 9 by 18.
Could you put up on the slide again the 2 slides that show the green in the front, the current one? That's the current one, or is that the new one?
That would be the proposed.
That's the proposed.
No, yeah, that would be the proposed. And the one before it, that would be the current. That shows you how much green space there is, how much separation we have. We're, of course, proposing to have the same quantity of trees. Some of the trees that are there, we don't have to take out, but we'd have to add to it. But this gives you a sense of the green separation and from the curb back to us.
Are you taking curbing out?
Right along that edge, like right through there, curbing will come out, yeah. The curb comes out, we add more.
How do you get into, so is that an egress into the car?
No, it means right now where you normally would park the car up against
come in there?
asphalt.
Yes, you come in here.
Yeah, you pull in there
Here's
and there,
another
yeah.
entrance.
Yeah, you pull in
Are you
those.
going to lose that?
No, none of that.
You're just making it narrower.
They're not, I'm sorry, but they're not adjusting the state highway entrances
Okay,
at all.
I guess that's my question. Thank you.
The curb you drive up against to park your car will get taken out to make it a little deeper.
Okay, gotcha.
By looking at the 2 slides, the cart says from 30 feet down to 12 feet. So that's a little more than half reduction. And you're there to make business.
I'm sorry?
You're there to make business and show cars.
Yes, yeah. And I think it's important that we highlight one little detail. Would you go to the car count page?
Say that again.
2 more slides forward.
Forward.
Or the map?
Yep, back up one.
Up one?
Yep.
Oh,
So that
gotcha.
little area I put in green is an island that we designed to be able to house a lot of electric car charging stations. Now, in our previous idea, what we were going to do here is we started in '08, I was planning for this. So I've got conduiting, even though the thing's paved, a lot of conduiting from the left side coming there and from the old Hyundai building coming there, so that we're able to set up a lot of car charging stations. If you look at that, we could fit 30 cars there and have a bunch of chargers. Because the thing that I hinted at earlier is the automotive industry it's been pretty stagnant for decades. You know, what we buy, I mean, Trans Am got a little nicer and then Trans Ams went away and we drove Camrys, but they were still pretty much the same things. I mean, there's a revolution when we went from leaded gas to unleaded. But right now, there's something really happening that regular car dealers locally are just starting to realize is a big deal, and it's going to happen really fast. And that is, we're going to transition from gasoline cars. I don't think they go completely away, but we're going to transition from almost 99% being gas to a big percentage are going to turn into battery electrics. And so it's really been important to us to have that infrastructure to be able to provide that. In a technological area like this, we think that's going to really happen. And so having that infrastructure there and the ability to have a lot of car chargers, because there aren't very many in the county currently, it's something that I've thought was real important for a long time, and it's finally making sense. And that's meant that there's SMECO issues and conduiting issues and electrical panel stuff that we've been preparing for as we thought we were building something else. We knew one way or the other the electric car thing would eventually show up.
Did you want to hear from the owner?
Yes.
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
You can have a seat, sir, and use that microphone there.
Should I?
Yes, that's a good start. Do you declare and affirm under the penalty of perjury that the testimony, responses, and statements you may give will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Come on, sit down and help us out.
Well, first of all, let me say, we're really excited to create perhaps the first electric car dealership in the county. Internal combustion engines have been around for 100 years, but there's a lot of pushback now with the greenhouse gas effects and things like that. So we think we're doing something very progressive, and Hyundai is spending $50 billion on R&D in the next 5 years to create electric cars and hydrogen cars that they probably won't sell in this country. But the battery electric Ioniq brand is an addition to the ICE, internal combustion engine vehicles that Hyundai makes now. And the only way that I qualify for Ioniq, because they will not give it all to all the dealers, is if I comply from a facility standpoint and build them a dealership with all the charging infrastructure, with all the design elements, and with the parking spaces that they request. And they are in the process of reviewing it between now and the end of this year. And some dealers will be approved and some will not. And that's kind of where we are. When we built this dealership back in 2007, the Hyundai and the Toyota stores, I thought it was way too big. I couldn't imagine that we would ever need all that space. But we ended up bursting at the seams with cars when inventory levels were normal. So that's why we bought the property next door between us and the Wawa, because we were just out of space. And it also helped connect us to the Wawa for our gasoline needs so that we wouldn't have to go out on the state highway, especially at rush hour. So we're excited about kind of this new frontier. We think that in this technology quarter, which is St. Mary's County, that this will be well-received, and I think it's going to be very good for the environment. And we will have chargers available to the public that they can use with their credit cards, and I don't think there are too many places in the county where people can do that. So we're excited about the whole thing. In terms of the cars and trucks that were out on the state highway land, apologies. I have not heard a word of complaint from anybody at LUGN or the neighbors or anybody about those vehicles, but I can certainly stop that from happening. And part of it is we display cars. Yes, we're guilty of that. But if our cars are closer to the highway as other dealerships are, I think that, that can work for us, and we can then certainly work within the limits of the reduced buffer zone that we're requesting, and I can keep my people from parking out on state highway land.
Mr. Chairman, if you would indulge me. So when the previous variance was approved in 2008, it was ordered that the trees or a combination of trees and shrubs shall be planted to screen the first row of cars adjacent to the buffer yard to mitigate the visual impact. So, time has passed, 13 years, and the owner probably doesn't recall that commitment to not have the cars beyond. But I think that addresses Mr. Medinsky's concern he brought up.
Well, I would like to make it a condition, and not only for this one, but the previous one also, even though it's already in there, but
I would also like to add that it appears they're also seeking a variance from the car manufacturer's standards by hoping they'll accept their close but not quite full quantity of spaces specified.
They have both those hurdles to get over, right?
That's true.
Right. We are below standard with Hyundai, and we are asking them for a variance. And what we're hearing from them informally is that if we meet about 90% of their standard, give or take, then they will probably go ahead and approve us. But none of this electric car dealership stuff's going to happen without your help.
Any other questions from the board?
No.
No?
No,
Any
sir.
other comments from you guys?
I don't have
Okay. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak for
We
or
have to check the
against?
phone, don't we?
Did you just raise your hand?
No, we have to check the phone.
And then we're
even
going to
if
check the
there's no
phone.
one in the audience.
Yeah, I was checking the audience first.
Board of Appeals.
Ms. Young, do we have any calls?
There are no callers at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I will close the meeting to public testimony. Thank you all for your participation. The board, do you all have any comments?
I don't have any problem with the new application, but you've heard me voice my opinion that I need to
Sounds like
a
maybe
condition. I know, but I want to reaffirm this. We have a condition that they no longer park vehicles in the state right away.
Well, we're doing a variance. Do we have conditions and variances?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that would be appropriate, yes.
Okay, that takes care of that.
And Mr. Chairman?
Can also reflect on the other property that he already has, and it's already been approved, and I know it's already in there, but,
Yes, sir, you can enroll that in this order, yes.
okay, then, no, I'm good then.
Anybody else?
I thought of a question after we said questions. So with the parking lot sizes, the parking space sizes, you mentioned that the compacts take 8.5 feet, vice to 9 feet. Have you guys, I haven't seen too many Hyundais that are huge. Have you guys looked at making more of those spots smaller?
So I did a whole lot of studying of that because we've been trying to figure out how to tackle the car stuff for a while. And the reality is that you don't get very much out of it.
Okay.
Like, you can do it, and it buys you 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2. Because you've got islands to live within, you're stuck with what's there. So to the extent that I thought it made sense to, we've done it.
Okay, thanks.
With this variance, there's still a site plan approval or minor site plan approval that's got to go forward for just the change, the paving, the curb?
Right, and I do believe they had all approvals with the exception of this variance.
Okay.
I believe that's correct.
Yes.
Okay. Will you make a motion?
Oh, I can. Let's see, where are we at? In the matter of VAP number 21-0038, Toyota of Southern Maryland, having made a finding that the standards for granting a variance in the objectives of Section 63.3 buffer yards and Schedule 63.3A buffer yard standards of the St. Mary's County Comprehensive Zoning Ordinance have been met, I move to approve the variance request to reduce the required 30-foot Type C buffer yard to a 12-foot Type C buffer yard along Maryland Route 235 with the condition that no vehicles be parked in the state right-of-way on either property.
Agreed.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
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 Okay, so we're there. An order reflecting the board's decision will be prepared by staff and signed by the board within 60 days. 30-day period follows from that date, from the date the order is signed, during which an aggrieved party may appeal the board's decision to circuit court. The recording secretary will mail you a copy of the order when it has been completed. Thank you and good luck. Sounds like a good project.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
We did approve the minutes, and I have one other, my script here says I got one other thing I got to say. Have a happy and safe Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Did you approve, or you saw the calendar?
Yes, we did that.
Yeah, okay, sorry, I had to step out of the room.
I drove by the dealership the other day, was down that way. It is inviting. You know, I was there.
We have one of the most beautiful buffer zones in the county.
I mean, it did look pretty. I was thinking, oh, that's nice, but maybe someday I'll come down.
Please. Thank you, Lynn.
Don't order an electric car for me.